Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. Today is the first day of the Spring Pledge Drive for Free Speech TV, and it is a critical time. It's like all the tipping points are converging, right? Climate change is now, has reached the point where we know that we've actually passed the tipping point with regard to Arctic and Antarctic and Greenland ice and things like that. It's just, which is very rarely discussed in the media. We've got a really important Democratic primary coming up at the same time that we're discovering that perhaps Russian or other trolls are out there. The media is reporting that there's this concerted effort to drive people apart inside the Democratic Party to cause people who are supporting different candidates to essentially hate each other. And again, that's very, very little discussion of that anywhere else. The genuine and important issues of the day, you find them right here on Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV, with this confluence of tipping points, this election rushing upon us, American fascism. We've got right-wingers now developing arsenals right here on Free Speech TV. Liberals in the media. Free Speech TV with this confluence of tipping points. This election rushing upon us. American fascism. We've got right-wingers now developing arsenals to go out and kill liberals in the media. I mean, this is a crucial time. Gathered in Madison Square Garden to give the yesterday was the anniversary of 1939. Yesterday was the day that we had to be a white Aryan nation. 30,000, as I recall, 29. Yeah, I think it was 30,000 people gathered in Madison Square Garden to give the Nazis salute and hear a speech about how we had to be a white Aryan nation. And applauded it, and the police were there, and they beat up a guy who was a protester. And I mean, you're not hearing that conversation and it was anywhere. You look at that, nightatthegarden.com, I think is the website. You look at that video, and it's like, oh my God, this is a Trump rally. It's just he just speaks in code. And you're not hearing that conversation anywhere other than right here on Free Speech TV about what's really going on in America. And that's why you need to call right now. This is a really important point in time. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. This is such a please call Free Speech TV right now. You can also and tell them that you want to donate, you want to participate, you want to support Free Speech TV, you want to be a member of Free Speech TV. Goodies for you with a $20 gift. This is such a critical time. You get a Free Speech TV please call now. You can also donate on the website at freespeech.org as well. Collection of Free Speech TV we have some stickers, the 6-sticker donation level goodies for you with a $20 gift. You get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. Frankly, with a $60 gift, you get a collection of Free Speech TV stickers, the 6-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get my brand new book. It's not even on these things. Frankly, it's not even printed yet. It won't arrive in your mail until probably late May. It starts out with the story of genocide and slavery, the foundation of this country. We laid our hands on on a pre-order here on these things. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, and it talks about. It starts out with the story of genocide and slavery, the foundation of this country in genocide of
Native Americans and slavery of Africans,
the largest genocide in the history of the world,
and how guns facilitated both those things. Those were the critical technologies in perpetuating slavery and in instituting 400 years of genocide, the largest genocide in the history of the world in all probability, although there may well be a similar one in Africa under colonialization. It wasn't as well documented, but still, as many as 100 million people killed on this continent
how the laws were changed
by essentially our ancestors.
It's just an amazing book. That's a $72 gift.
So the book starts with that. And then goes through how the NRA got in bed with the, with the right wing and how, the laws were changed. It's just an amazing book. That's a $72 gift. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt with a viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get everything that I just mentioned. You get the book, the hoodie, the T-shirt, the pin, and the stickers.
Last campaign.
That's a $360 gift.
A lot of fun.
With a $500 gift
on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma. I've written a couple of books about these topics. We're going to do a deep dive into how, in these troubled times, how we can get control of and heal from fear, anxiety, stress, and even trauma using deep psychological techniques that some of them go back to the 1700s. Some of them are more modern strategies developed by people like Milton Erickson and Richard Bandler, how to deal with pains from the past, fears about the future, resolving trauma, letting go of the triggers in our lives, how to become more resilient. That'll be the webinar. That's with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can spend the last hour of the show here in the studio with us and see how we do the show, and we'll walk over to or drive whatever to a nearby restaurant and have a nice lunch together. That's sort of a $1,000 gift. But the point is we need to make this day big. Program. And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. Boy, this story, I mentioned this briefly yesterday. I just want to recap it very quickly. This mother came to the United States from Guatemala, where she had been raped by a member of the Guatemalan military that was, quote, protecting the town she lived in. She was one of a number of women in this town who were routinely being raped by these soldiers. She fled to the United States with her 3-year-old child, her daughter. She reached the U.S. border and went to an official border entry point, a legal crossing point, as our law specifies a person is supposed to do if they're seeking asylum, and as international law says, but U.S. law says this. She applied for asylum there. Her application was accepted, as it has, it doesn't always have to be, but and then they took her child away from her, and for 8.5 weeks refused to tell her where her daughter was. She later learned that her daughter had been taken to a place called the Hacienda del Sol. It was shut down because the staffers were routinely engaging in child abuse, actually abusing the children. She was, during that period of time, about 8 weeks into this, she was allowed a phone call with her daughter. She literally every day she had been begging, "Where is my daughter?" And finally, after 8 weeks, they gave her a phone call, and when her daughter started crying 2 minutes into the call, the social worker cut the line. That was it. 2 weeks later, she was reunited with her daughter through the efforts of some good lawyers. And, her asylum claim is being processed. This was all done, illegally, essentially, by the Trump administration. Tearing children from their parents. That's not part of the law. That the only time before Trump, the only time in history that has ever been done is when, for example, during the Obama administration, when they thought that the person who was representing themselves as a parent was not actually the parent, that they might be trafficking the child or that they were explicitly abusive. This little girl now, when she's asked questions, gives one-word answers. She's afraid to go outside. She cannot go outside with her mother. She starts screaming and shrieking. She cannot fall asleep unless her mother is holding her, not just in the same room, holding her. The minute mom lets go of her, this little girl wakes up and starts screaming. This is what your tax dollars are paying for. This is what Donald Trump is so proud of. On the line with us is Julio Rivera, the editorial director at Reactionary Times, columnist at Newsmax, an American thinker, and townhall.com, reactionarytimes.com. His Twitter handle, oh yeah, it's Julio. Julio, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom.
So, in my opinion, Donald Trump and Mike Pence, and perhaps Kristen Nielsen, the head of DHS, should be arrested and prosecuted for kidnapping and child abuse. What say you?
Okay, first off, to this little narrative framing that you're doing, Tom, trying to make it seem like this is a
This is one of probably 3,000 stories, Julio.
This goes back to every president, vice president, and the administration from Bill Clinton in 1997 on.
No,
this is
Julio, I'm sorry. I can't let you just lie on the air like that. Julio, that is not true. Look it up.
Florida's consent decree, which went ahead and allowed for, I think you have, listen, I'm not going to deny.
The only reason legally that children could be separated from their parents was if there was a suspicion of abuse or or human trafficking. Donald Trump changed that, and John Kelly went on national television and said the reason we're changing this policy, the reason we're tormenting these children, is to discourage parents from showing up at our border with kids.
Well, you know what? That's not the worst idea in the world. I mean, I'm not saying that we should be holding the kids accountable and punish the children. That's an unfortunate byproduct of a broken system.
This is not a broken system. This is a crime.
No, what we need to do, and this speaks to the larger problem, we need to build that wall. We need to enforce our immigration laws domestically.
This is not about immigration. This is about refugee status.
At the end of the day, you're pointing out, one story, and it is an unfortunate story. But when you have thousands, literally thousands of children, there's no way that the United States, we're not, we don't have the infrastructure to support bringing in all these illegals.
That's why you leave them with their parents, Julio.
Unfortunately.
That's why you leave them with their parents. I mean, you got children's prisons now that are being built.
Because it's not our problem, Tom. That's what you fail to see. If we didn't have, our open border policies and sanctuary cities and all these things, if we were sanctioning the people who hire these people and create opportunities for them, paying them under the table, and if we hit them so hard that they would have no economic opportunities, they wouldn't come here. And guess what, Tom? Then it wouldn't be our problem.
Julio, you would still have that's an immigration argument, and thank you for echoing my point. But I'm not talking about immigration here. The majority, we have had negative immigration from the United States over the last 10 years with regard to Mexico. We've got the majority of people who are overstaying their visas, who are coming into this country legally and ending up being here illegally, and in many cases working, are Canadians. The majority, not Mexicans. Canadians. Mexicans have been leaving this country and going back to Mexico. But what this is, well, let me just finish this sentence and then you can react. What this is refugees. Ronald Reagan committed treason by conspiring with Iran to sell them weapons in exchange for their holding hostages to make Jimmy Carter look like a fool to win an election. After that happened, he took that money and he used it to buy weapons to support right-wing governments down in Central America, in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Elliot Abrams was right in the middle of this war criminal Elliot Abrams, who Bob Barr, the guy that was just made Attorney General, recommended George Herbert Walker Bush pardon, which he did. And that ruined those countries. Those countries are absolute messes now because of U.S. policy, and their people are coming here as refugees.
Well, listen, Tom, that's another debate. But the whole thing as far as refugees seeking asylum, there's a lot of people that are coming in right now making that claim that are not truly refugees. So we have to really take a deep look into each one of their cases.
I agree. That's why we need more judges. That's why we need more officers investigating these situations. People should have, there should be due process. If somebody comes, with their child and says, I'm a refugee, the police were raping me, my child was threatened, then there should be due process. Trump has dialed back on that. He has not spent the $1 billion that Congress appropriated 2 years ago for this kind of thing. He has not spent that money. He has dialed back on that, and instead he's saying he wants his trophy wall.
It's not a trophy wall. The wall would prevent all these problems going forward.
This woman did not illegally cross the border, Julio. She presented herself at a port of entry in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. That's fine. You're using this one case. But
the vast majority of these children who have been separated came to legal ports of entry.
I understand, but not all of them. Not all of them. This isn't what the bigger problem is. That right now we have to go ahead and say, and you're right. Listen, these refugee cases. Yes, we need more judges. We need more people looking at these. There's some people that have suffered some horrific atrocities at the hands of some shady governments and, illegal, crime, organized crime figures within their country. And it's horrible. The human trafficking, all of it has to end. But the best path to do that is to go ahead and say, put up that wall and say, listen, America is closed. For right now, it's closed. And if you come into a legal port of entry, yes, then we'll go ahead and review your asylum application.
And steal your child?
If you have a legitimate claim, you'll get it. But
steal your child?
We have too much. We have too much going on.
And steal your child?
What was that?
And steal your child?
Not steal your child. If we
so you're agreeing with me that Donald Trump and Mike Pence should be in jail for child abuse and kidnapping.
And we hold the children for no longer than 20 days, which we have the legal right to keep the parents separated from the children for up to 20 days, I believe, under the Flores consent decree, while these things are going on.
That was only in cases where you suspect child trafficking, Julio, number one. And number two, even 1 day of separation for a 3-year-old can destroy the rest of their lives.
That's debatable, but yes, it is horrible. It's horrible. But I don't think that you can put that on the Trump administration. The way that you're trying to frame this is that, we're going to...
John Kelly came out and bragged about this. Kristen Nielsen testified before Congress. This is a deterrence policy. This is a brand new thing in the history of the United States. We are going to tear families apart and put children in children's prisons where they're not allowed to be touched. Their parents can't talk to them. I
have a question for you, Tom. When this caravan was coming up, and let me finish this before you cut me off. When this caravan was coming up, and a lot of people were saying that they wanted asylum from whatever Central American country they were coming from, Mexico offered them asylum, and they didn't take it. So at the end of the day, some of the personal responsibility has to fall on the parents as well.
About 3/4 of the people who came up in the last so-called caravan, this group of a little over 1,000 people who came up through Mexico that Donald Trump was hysterical about. Let's say it was 2,000, just before the election.
Like 10.
Let's say it was 10,000. More than 70% of them stayed in Mexico. They have not come to the U.S. border.
Mm-hmm. Well, they should have all stayed in Mexico.
Well, that day may come, but this is a mess that we created. That war criminal Elliott Abrams and the war criminals Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. put this thing together, and now you've got Mike Pence and Donald Trump, and I think these guys should be arrested for kidnapping and child abuse.
How are left-wing governments doing in South America right now? How's Venezuela working out for you? How's democratic socialism working?
Julio, I am not a Venezuelan. I'm an American, and I'm concerned about what is being done in my country, and I'm concerned about the fact that Mike Pence and Donald Trump are engaging in kidnapping and child abuse, and proud of it. And they've got people defending them for that.
Listen, there's going to be unfortunate cases like the case that you keep referencing. That's like, I'm sure that's like the needle in the haystack. That's not the majority across the board.
So you think the vast majority of children who are torn apart from their parents for months at a time are just fine with it?
Sure that these kids are not being trafficked in for child abuse, for sexual abuse, for all the horrible things, the atrocities that these poor people face. We have to make sure that at the very least, the one thing we can guarantee them was while they were in U.S. custody was that child was not being raped.
Well, no, we can't guarantee them that because that's why they shut down the center where this woman's child was taken, because they were abusing the children.
They were not abusing the children.
They absolutely were. It was shut down. Look it up. It's called Hacienda del Sol in Arizona. You can Google it. Anyhow, Julio Rivera, reactionarytimes.com, his Twitter handle. Oh, yeah, it's Julio. Hang on just a second, Julio.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Julio, thanks for coming on and talking with me. I appreciate it.
I always love coming on. Have a great day, Tom.
Thanks, you too, Julio. Bye-bye. We'll be back. And welcome back. Alex in Edison, New Jersey. Hey, Alex, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching us on YouTube.
Hi, Tom. It's immigration. So one word that's not in the debate is permanent, or phrase, permanent damage. That is what we're doing to these children.
Yes. And I would argue to their parents as well, although the children are much more vulnerable.
But there's a big picture aspect too. How, when our trade negotiators talk to China, or better yet, Europe, this stuff comes into play. Our reputation is being hurt. And I don't know what's worse. I mean, there's different, it's hard to measure one or the other to compare. But I don't really care to, this impacts my patriotism, knowing that my tax dollars go to inflict permanent damage. The government has psychologists. They know that, but they don't care. Well, at least one party. Anyway, that's your comments, and I'll take it offline.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alex, thank you very much. I get how heartfelt you are about this, and I share it. And I don't know what to say. Well, actually, I do. In terms of patriotism and in terms of our ability to negotiate with other people, this, I believe, is one of the major reasons why when Mike Pence was in Europe and he said, "I bring you greetings from President Donald Trump," and then he waited for the applause, literally not one person clapped. And Ivanka Trump was in the audience. She didn't even clap, although I think that's because she was shocked. Amanda in Trinidad, Colorado. Hey, Amanda, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's up?
I just want to reiterate on this is just ridiculous. How can you call a state of emergency? And there are people, we have to look at the actual human beings, everyone that came here to the United States were immigrants. And not letting immigrants into the country, especially people in dire stress. And now, this is not a president. He is a businessman. All he wants is to make his plot for the border wall true. But it's ridiculous, and he should have people who told him that this is ridiculous. But we have a rogue president, a president of the United States of America, who is basically a kindergartner running around with laws.
Yeah. Being advised by people like, white supremacist Stephen Miller. Amanda, thank you. I get your concern as well. It's 22 minutes, past the hour. We'll be back with your calls in just a moment. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at thomhartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and John in West Chicago, Illinois. Hey, John, what's up?
Hi, I'm talking about we don't need a wall, and one thing. And second thing, why they don't give a visa when they come in a border? If they go to Messi, they're not giving a visa. Anybody in the Muslim country, in the Mexican, anywhere.
Yeah.
And why the people not coming? And the people have a difficulty. Every government, who's not happy with the American government, they make trouble for them. They always keep making trouble. They're greedy. And second thing I want to say, Senate is destroying. Mitch McConnell destroying the Senate. And you guys need to talk about him. He's a dangerous for country, and he's destroying the Senate. And
John, I'm not sure if I heard an obscenity in there or not, but I think probably not. But I'm going to cut you off in any case. And yeah, I agree that Mitch McConnell is a problem. No, it's passed. You know, this is what we got to deal with, right? This is what we got to deal with. Stephanie in Hopkins Park, Illinois. Hey, Stephanie, what's up?
Hey, Tom, we fought that immigration detention center in our little town. Our town has 900 people. We forget when you're dealing with Donald Trump, follow the money.
Yeah.
And the money that his people are going to make after him. These for-profit prison people come to small towns like mine who are poor and promise them $1 million to $2 million a year.
Yeah.
If they keep the beds full. Now, they first tried it on the war for drugs, and they couldn't get enough people to fill the prison. So now they're doing it on immigration, and they're filling these prisons with these people. This is not about immigration. This is about the profit for the prison business.
I agree with you.
And
I agree with you, Steph.
When are we going to learn whatever Donald Trump does? Follow the money.
Right.
See who's going to profit from it. Then we'll see where the motivation comes from.
And there's two giant prison corporations, multi-billion-dollar corporations, that are getting these contracts. They're being paid $600, $700, $800, in some cases $900 a day to take care of, and I put that in quotes, to imprison, basically, to put in cages little tiny children who have been torn from their parents as a way of discouraging refugees, for God's sake, from coming to the United States. And yes, they build them in communities where you have terrible economic distress, and they use that as the way of getting people to be supportive of it. It is obscene. Stephanie, thank you very much for the call. I am of the opinion that there should be charges brought against Pence and Trump for kidnapping and child abuse. What say you?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I mean, this has gone way beyond just like something politically wrong. This is not even just a moral crime. This is a legal crime. Today is the first day of the Spring Pledge Drive for Free Speech TV, and it is a critical time. It's like all the tipping points are converging, right? Climate change is now, has reached the point where we know that we've actually passed the tipping point with regard to Arctic and Antarctic and Greenland ice and things like that. It's just, which is very rarely discussed in the media. We've got a really important Democratic primary coming up at the same time that we're discovering that perhaps Russian or other trolls are out there. The media is reporting that there's this concerted effort to drive people apart inside the Democratic Party to cause, people who are supporting different candidates to essentially hate each other. And again, that's very, very little discussion of that anywhere else. The genuine and important issues of the day, you find them right here on Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV with this confluence of tipping points, this election rushing upon us, you know, American fascism. We've got, you know, right-wingers now developing arsenals to go out and kill liberals in the media. I mean, this is a crucial time. Yesterday was the anniversary of 1939. Yesterday was the day that the 30,000, as I recall, 29, yeah, I think it was 30,000 people gathered in Madison Square Garden to give the Nazis salute and hear a speech about how we had to be a white Aryan nation, and applauded it. And the police were there, and they beat up a guy who was a protester. And I mean, and it was, you look at that, nightatthegarden.com, I think is the website. You look at that video, and it's like, oh my God, this is a Trump rally. You know, it's just, he just speaks in code. And you're not hearing that conversation anywhere other than right here on Free Speech TV about what's really going on in America. And that's why you need to call right now. This is a really important point in time. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call Free Speech TV right now and tell them that you want to donate, you want to participate, you want to support Free Speech TV, you want to be a member of Free Speech TV. This is such a critical time. Please call now. You can also donate on the website at freespeech.org as well. We have some donation level goodies for you with a $20 gift. You get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get a collection of Free Speech TV stickers, the 6-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get my brand new book. It's not even, frankly, it's not even printed yet. It won't arrive in your mail until probably late May. But it is, we laid our hands on, you know, so on a pre-order here on these things. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, and it talks about, it starts out with the story of genocide and slavery, the foundation of this country, in genocide of Native Americans and slavery of Africans, and how guns facilitated both those things. Those were the critical technologies in perpetuating slavery and in instituting 400 years of genocide, the largest genocide in the history of the world in all probability, although there may well be a similar one in Africa under colonialization. It wasn't as well documented. But still, as many as 100 million people killed on this continent by essentially our ancestors. And so the book starts with that, and then goes through how the NRA got in bed with the, you know, with the right wing, and how, you know, the laws were changed, and it's just an amazing book. That's with a $72 gift. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt with a viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get everything that I just mentioned. You get the book, the hoodie, the T-shirt, the pin, and the stickers. That's with a $360 gift. With a $500 gift, I'm putting together a webinar series. We did one on NLP a couple of weeks ago for you know, donors, major donors to our last campaign, and it worked really, really well. It was a lot of fun. People liked it. We're going to do this one on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma. I've written a couple of books about this, about these topics. We're going to do a deep dive into how, in these troubled times, how we can get control of and heal from fear, anxiety, stress, and even trauma, using deep psychological techniques that go, some of them go back to the 1700s. Some of them are more modern strategies developed by people like Milton Erickson and Richard Bandler, how to deal with pains from the past, fears about the future, resolving trauma, letting go of the triggers in our lives, how to become more resilient. That'll be the webinar. That's with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can spend the last hour of the show here in the studio with us and see how we do the show, and you know, we'll walk over to or drive whatever to a nearby restaurant and have a nice lunch together. That's with a $1,000 gift. But the point is, we need to make this day big. Please, let's kick off this day. Let's really do it. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV and our show. We need you. please call now. Thank you so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Just a heads up, an economy heads up. CNBC is reporting that U.S. home sales fell in January to their lowest level in more than 3 years. Now, this might be a blip because, interest rates have been going up, which drives down home sales. And I believe it was in January that the Fed essentially reversed that policy, but it may not have filtered through. Or this could be a leading indicator of a recession that's coming. So anyhow, just FYI. Scott in Missoula, Montana. Hey, Scott, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Tom, I wanted to see if you could riff on the subject of how these people on the right are able to dehumanize people to the point where even children who were evolutionarily programmed to care for mattered not to them at all. And I don't know, maybe you've got some insight into that.
Well, I think, in defense of Julio, I think that he's probably really struggling with this one. I mean, his politics, we strongly disagree politically, but he's a decent person. He had to go back to Puerto Rico to take care of, I think it was his mother or his grandmother who was, badly injured during the hurricane. And I think that there's probably a lot of people who are Trump defenders who are, kind of torn up and twisted inside about this issue. But for Trump and for Stephen Miller, the guys who are spearheading these policies, and Mike Pence, who in 2000 wrote an op-ed about how tobacco doesn't cause cancer because they were spiffing him. These people, I think, probably fall into the spectrum of sociopathy. They have no conscience and they have no ability to actually identify with other people, or a very limited one. And I think that that's what's going on. And I think that what has happened is that the right has become the home for sociopaths. And I think that the number of sociopaths, the psychologists tell us that the number of sociopaths in society is around 2 or 3%, but that the number of sociopaths in prison is around 40%, and the number of sociopaths in senior positions in large corporations is as high as 25%. And so, it shouldn't surprise us that we have sociopaths who have risen to these high levels, because that, brazenness is one of the aspects of sociopathy, and it's also one of the aspects of leadership and of success in climbing the ladder, as it were, being willing to step on others to get there. So I think all this stuff is just all tied together, Scott. I don't think there's like one simple thing that you can point to, but when you look at the rise of the Nazi movement, I mentioned that nightatthegarden.com website. It's really worth checking out. When you look at the history of this, what I think what you see is that it's like there are places where sociopaths can go to feel like they have their own community, essentially. And then, on top of that, of course, you've got people who are simply fearful. They've been, the fear has been ginned up in them by sociopaths who are TV hosts on Fox so-called news or on right-wing hate radio, or people who are not even sociopaths. They're just opportunists. They're just, they're making their millions and doing their thing. So I hope that makes sense, Scott. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It just seems like in at least in rural America where I live, there's a lot higher percentage of them that think like that than would be accounted for in the number of psychopaths in our society.
I think some of that too is just this sense of dissociation. In rural areas, the Death of the Bowling League was a book that I think a guy named Robert Draper wrote back in the late 90s or early 2000s, and he's British, but it was a story about how in Great Britain and the United States, largely since the Reagan-Thatcher administrations, our institutions have been dissolving, just breaking up. The Elks, the Moose, the social clubs that we used to have, the book clubs, the reading circles. That people just haven't done this, and whether it's caused by television and cable TV, or whether it's caused by the internet, or whether it's caused, I think frankly it's caused by Reaganism causing economic distress and people having to work 2 and 3 jobs. But whatever the cause is, it's worse, that sense of disconnect from your neighbors and friends and a lack of places where you can become community. basically outside of churches, is worse in rural areas than it is in urban areas. Scott, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Elena in Los Angeles, listed on KPFK. Hey, Elena, what's up?
Hi, I am just, every time I listen to this man, I just have to pull over on the side of the road. He's a Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
A Puerto Rican. He keeps forgetting that outside, when he is in the group, how he is actually looked at.
Elena, Julio's not here to defend himself. I think it's real unfair to be picking on him, frankly.
Well, it's just that I've listened every time that he calls, and yes, I do see that he's struggling with the children being separated from the parents.
Yes.
And you listen when he is trying to rationalize this horrible, horrible thing that is being done. That has been done.
Which says to me that there's a lot of humanity in Julio, that he's not just one of these sociopaths, but that his gig is to be this right-wing guy and commentator, and I think in most cases he really believes it, and I think we're pushing up against the edges of what he can deal with. But again, I'm very uncomfortable discussing somebody who's not here to defend themselves.
No. But again, it just has to do with the what people are not realizing, and I'm sure that some doctors are already taking a look at. 20 years from now, these children have been totally messed up.
Yeah.
What do you think? And I'm not saying all, but there's one of them is going to really flip.
Yeah, you're gonna see a very small percentage of them go crazy in ways that are destructive to other people. You're gonna see violence and spousal abuse and things like that. A much larger percentage of them are going to experience severe depression, anxiety, and suicide.
Yeah,
those are going to be the major outcomes of what's going on.
Given time, this is going to come back and bite us. Real big.
Yeah,
anyway,
I absolutely agree.
So
Elena, thank you for the call. Thank you very much. David in Mamaroneck, New York. Hey, David, what's up?
Hi, good afternoon. I just wanted, whenever I hear about this stuff, and when I first came out last year about children being in cages, my maternal grandfather escaped Nazi Germany in 1936, and I've heard very few Jews have the visceral reaction that I've had towards this, and my mother's had this. And I don't know why American Jews aren't speaking out about this, and
I suspect many are. I'm
ashamed that Israel isn't speaking out about this.
Well, I
don't hear that many American Jews speaking. Maybe there are, but
yeah, I'm not hearing. I mean, yeah, okay, David, I'm going to stop that conversation because every now and then somebody comes on and they start talking about Jews or Israel, and then very quickly it evolves into basically anti-Semitic rants, and I will have no part in that. That's not going to happen on this program. Angel in San Gabriel, California. Hey, and I'm not saying that that's what this guy was trying to do, the last caller, but I don't even want to dance near the edge of it. Angel in San Gabriel, California. What's up, Angel?
Hey, Tom, good morning. I have two comments to make. One is the immigration problem. It can get fixed. It's easy to fix. Just our president, I don't think he really wants to do it. The first thing you have to do is the good people who are not criminals, they should get a work permit. Otherwise, if he deports everybody, the whole country is going to collapse. Now, after that, he needs to find the companies who hire people who with no papers. The first time, the second time, put them out of business.
I agree.
And then when we need more visas, then send more visas to all the countries so people come to work legally. That's the thing.
Yeah, Trump had hired Trump had like 15 people working for him in Bedminster at his golf club for, in some cases, as much as 18 years, knowing that they were not in this country legally. And Trump is the guy who is, screaming about this stuff. If you want to start putting rich white employers who are hiring people undocumented in this country, and again, that's a separate issue from asylum seekers, but if you want to do that, let's start by putting either Donald Trump or the people who made the decisions, probably his son or his daughter or somebody, or whoever's running his golf club, put them in jail. Amen. Angel, thank you for the call. James in Mineola, Texas. Hey, James.
I just don't understand. You guys have this vigor and stuff for the immigrants, right, that are coming over, illegal immigrants that are coming over. But when Kamala Harris talked about putting parents in jail for their kids not going to school, it was okay. And the same, y'all don't put that same vigor and stuff in for kids who are being aborted. I just make me understand.
James, we're talking about actual people here who are living human beings, and this has absolutely nothing to do with abortion. Nice try, but, you know, ain't going to work. Lee in Beverly Hills, listening on KPFK. Hey, Lee, what's up?
Oh, hello. That's me. I must say, I adore your program, absolutely adore it. It is medicine for the soul and mind, and I wish you could get it into absolutely every household. I think the only way to do that is for people to keep making contributions so you can expand, expand, expand.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do.
You're welcome. What was your point, though?
On the wall.
Yeah.
I had to acknowledge you first and foremost.
I thank you for that.
On the wall, I have noticed that Trump positively adores dictators, and that is obviously because he is one of them, the dictator-in-chief, who happens to be occupying the White House.
Yep.
And it is dreadfully unfortunate, but in the United States of America, I don't think he would be able to get away with building one of those humongous statues, such as in North Korea and throughout many other parts of the world in the previous Soviet Union. And therefore, it appears to me his substitute is this wall with plaques of him and his name all over it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is his substitute for the adulation that he absolutely wants from his followers. And he seems to be almost psychotically, I'm sorry, I have to take the word almost out of there because it doesn't even apply, psychotically addicted to getting people to have undying, unflinching, unconscious loyalty to him.
Yeah.
And if they do not, then he plays his reality TV show and fires them. You're fired.
And destroy, and then tries to destroy them and their families and everybody around them. Lee, what you just said was profound, and it gave me this huge aha that, yes, Stalin had statues to Stalin all over the country. Mao had statues to Mao all over the country. Kim Jong-un has statues to Kim all over the country. And Trump can't quite do that here in the United States. I mean, that's what the Reagan Legacy Project did, build a statue to Ronald Reagan in every single congressional district in the United States. But that was after Reagan, was no longer president. And Reagan didn't do that. The billionaires who funded him did that. So Trump can't build statues to himself, and he can't wait. In fact, he may not live long enough to see the statues, just like Ronald Reagan didn't live long enough to see all the statues being built to himself. So the statue that he's trying to build to himself right now is this wall. That is profound. Lee, thank you so much for that. Thanks for the call and thanks for your kind words. Thank you for listening to KPFK. We'll be back. It's 46 minutes and change past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars, having hopefully rational conversations and debates, and teaching us all how to talk back to the other side. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's 47 minutes past the hour, and the place where smart people get their news. And welcome back. Deb, watching us on Sling TV. I'm assuming that's the Free Speech TV app on Sling in Ancona, Annika, Minnesota. Am I saying that right? Deb?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Tom.
Hi, you're on the air.
Hi. Welcome from the frozen north.
Thank you.
I was shocked at the vigor that guy made his arguments with. I'm ashamed to be part of the same human race that can spout that kind of hate.
Well, let's not personalize this to Julio. There is.
I'm not personalizing it to Julio.
Of our government right now.
I'm talking about the policy and the lines that were. It's the rhetoric.
Yeah.
That keeps being used.
Yeah.
I don't fault him. I don't know him. But it's the policy that they defend, and they keep defending it.
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking and saddening.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, I think it's criminal. And this is why I was not being facetious when I said that I thought that people should be held accountable for this. This is kidnapping and child abuse. These are crimes. They may not be federal crimes, but they are certainly state crimes. And I would like to see some state attorney generals try to prosecute some of these Trump administration officials and the people who are engaged in these practices, because this is illegal. The court ordered that the Trump administration reunite these, several thousand children with their families. 3 months ago, 4 months ago, longer than that, however long ago it was, and they're still. Apparently, they will acknowledge several hundred, but apparently it's several thousand children where they have no friggin' idea where they are because they weren't keeping track. They were simply ripping them from their parents and sending them off to whatever private prison would take the money.
I'll tell you what, where I live, they hunt those people down vigorously. You cannot escape.
What do you mean?
And I live in the Midwest, and child abusers and people that abuse children, it is not tolerated in any way, shape, or form. And as you say, these people are guilty of that in the highest echelons.
Yeah, this should be an international scandal. That this is the official policy of the United States is to destroy the psychic lives, the future lives of children in exchange for the votes of white supremacists, essentially, is what it is. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Trump would not be doing this if these were white Europeans. He would not be doing this if this was families who came over from Norway and overstayed their visas. And by the way, there are families who came over from Norway and overstayed their visas. And probably not so many from Norway, but a lot of them from Ireland, a lot of them from Spain. And Trump is not going after them because their skin is not as dark as the people who are coming in from south of the border.
Absolutely not. Thank you so much for what you do, and thank you for giving me time to air my grievances. I'm still so exercised over the thought process behind that. I can barely stand it.
Yeah, me too. Deb, thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. And we'll be right back. It's 51 minutes past the hour, 9 minutes before the hour. Here on the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where despair is not an option. No, we're all about getting active and doing things. We'll be right back. Thank you for listening to and watching our program. Over at patreon.com/Thom Hartmann, and for our subscribers over on YouTube, we have a new video up about how this is wild. Two white supremacist groups were holding a rally, right? And you were able to kill them both? Great. We're back on the air. Colleen in Manorville, New York. Hey, Colleen, what's up?
Oh, hi. Yes, and I'm not attacking Jose because Julio.
Yeah.
Julio, I'm sorry. And but 3 of my grandparents were not born in the United States. Now, when my Irish grandparents came over, they had to leave 2 of their children in Ireland because they didn't have the money to pay to book passage. Mm-hmm. And they came over and it was many years before my uncles got back here. Got over and reunited with the family. And I wonder if they weren't Irish, if they didn't speak English, if they weren't the right color, would they have been allowed in the country?
Yeah.
And the reason that my grandparents came here was because there was no food and no work because of English policies. And I'm not picking on the English that are currently there.
No, but those English policies actually were, at least in the 1840s, were genocidal to the Irish.
Yes, absolutely. And so many millions of people did die.
Yes.
And my grandmother was like, I have 2 kids I can't feed now. So she got on a boat, and my grandfather followed her because he didn't want to, leave her alone. But it was when my uncles did come over and my dad was born here, it was almost like a fractured family. And to this day, the legacy of not uniting that family is with us. And my Italian family came over because they had such devastation over there from World War II. And so they were allowed to come over because of that kind of situation. And I wonder if they weren't like white enough, you know, and you just look at the situation and you say, why is it that skin color, are you less human? And why is it that my family had to be divided like my Irish family like it was? It really brings out this lack of humanity that I still see in the policies of immigration today.
Yeah.
And it's devastating to families. I've seen it in my own family, and it wasn't even as horrific as what you're talking about.
Yeah, it is, and it's poison. I mean, two of my four grandparents were born in Norway, not in the United States, and Norway didn't experience the kind of oppression that Ireland did, but you know they came over here anyway, and I get what you're talking about, absolutely, and it's like. And they were white. They had no problem coming through Ellis Island in 1917.
How do you justify saying that because somebody's melatonin in their skin is a different ratio than yours, that makes them less human?
Yep.
And it's just crushing, and it's going to really impact our country for many, many, many years.
Oh, it has for 400 years already, and this is what we have to reconcile. This is the challenge of our time. Colleen, thank you for identifying that, putting your finger on that. Lisa in Niles, Ohio. Hey, Lisa, what's up?
Hi, Tom. You just hit my point in the last 5 seconds. You know, we started with the Indians genocide, then we enslaved the Africans, and then what Reagan did in Central America, and also what we did in the Middle East with our, you know, trying to make their government what we thought it should be. It ended up coming back to us. Now we're doing it to the so-called Mexicans or Central Americans.
Yeah.
America,
and in the middle of there was Vietnam. I mean, and the one thing that was the common denominator in all those cases was we were not going to war against white people. And in fact, it took us being bombed at Pearl Harbor by the Japanese for us to go to war with white people in Europe. I mean,
though, we're getting faster at learning our mistakes, I believe.
I hope so.
Thank goodness. That's what I got to think. We're seeing this now with the children, and there's many of us, and hopefully a lot of white people this time too, that are seeing it right now.
And waking up.
We can't keep letting this be a part of our shameful history.
Yeah.
We can't let it happen.
No, and this is part of, I mean, this is the daily life of people of color in this country and always has been, and Native Americans, and you know, and they know this well. And it is incumbent on all of us who are white to be sharing that story with our neighbors and friends. I'm sorry, what did you say, Lisa?
As white people, we need to look at it. What if that was me or my child? Because we don't have that same life experience, and we can't see it in that way. So we have to intentionally put our mind there.
Yes, it's like intentional empathy, and this is a challenge. I mean, this is a challenge for America. I mean, obviously at the individual level too, particularly for people who have always lived in a white bubble, it's a challenge. But this is a challenge for all of us right now. Thanks a lot for the call, Lisa. It's great to hear from you. Dr. Richard Wolff is going to be up next. We're going to be discussing the crisis in Venezuela, the economic aspects of it, what's really going on. And so stick around. It's coming up on the top of the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. Today is the first day of the Spring Pledge Drive for Free Speech TV, and it is a critical time. It's like all the tipping points are converging, right? Climate change is now, has reached the point where we know that we've actually passed the tipping point with regard to Arctic and Antarctic and Greenland ice and things like that. It's just, which is very rarely discussed in the media. We've got a really important Democratic primary coming up at the same time that we're discovering that perhaps Russian or other trolls are out there. The media is reporting that there's this concerted effort to drive people apart inside the Democratic Party to cause people who are supporting different candidates to essentially hate each other. And again, that's very, very little discussion of that anywhere else. The genuine and important issues of the day, you find them right here on Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV, with this confluence of tipping points, this election rushing upon us, American fascism. We've got, right-wingers now developing arsenals to go out and kill liberals in the media. I mean, this is a crucial time. Yesterday was the anniversary of 1939. Yesterday was the day that the 30,000, as I recall, 29, I think it was 30,000 people gathered in Madison Square Garden to give the Nazis salute and hear a speech about how we had to be a white Aryan nation, and applauded it. And the police were there and they beat up a guy who was a protester. And I mean, you look at that, nightatthegarden.com, I think is the website. You look at that video and it's like, oh my God, this is a Trump rally. It's just, he just speaks in code. And you're not hearing that conversation anywhere other than right here on Free Speech TV about what's really going on in America. And that's why you need to call right now. This is a really important point in time. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call Free Speech TV right now and tell them that you want to donate, you want to participate, you want to support Free Speech TV, you want to be a member of Free Speech TV. This is such a critical time. Please call now. You can also donate on the website at freespeech.org as well. We have some donation level goodies for you with a $20 gift. You get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get a collection of Free Speech TV stickers, the 6-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get my brand new book. It's not even, frankly, it's not even printed yet. It won't arrive in your mail until probably late May. But it is, we laid our hands on, on a pre-order here on these things. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, and it starts out with the story of genocide and slavery, the foundation of this country, in genocide of Native Americans and slavery of Africans, and how guns facilitated both those things. Those were the critical technologies in perpetuating slavery and in instituting 400 years of genocide, the largest genocide in the history of the world in all probability, although there may well be a similar one in Africa under colonialization. It wasn't as well documented. But still, as many as 100 million people killed on this continent by essentially our ancestors. And so the book starts with that. and then goes through how the NRA got in bed with the with the right wing and how the laws were changed, and it's just an amazing book. That's with a $72 gift. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt with a viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get everything that I just mentioned. You get the book, the hoodie, the T-shirt, the pin, and the stickers. That's with a $360 gift. With a $500 gift, I'm putting together a webinar series. We did one on NLP a couple of weeks ago for donors, major donors to our last campaign, and it worked really, really well. It was a lot of fun. People liked it. We're going to do this one on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma. I've written a couple of books about these topics. We're going to do a deep dive into how, in these troubled times, how we can get control of and heal from fear, anxiety, stress, and even trauma using deep psychological techniques that some of them go back to the 1700s. Some of them are more modern strategies developed by people like Milton Erickson and Richard Bandler, how to deal with pains from the past, fears about the future, resolving trauma, letting go of the triggers in our lives, how to become more resilient. That'll be the webinar. That's with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can spend the last hour of the show here in the studio with us and see how we do the show, and we'll walk over to or drive to a nearby restaurant and have a nice lunch together. That's with a $1,000 gift. But the point is, we need to make this day big. Please, let's kick off this day. Let's really do it. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV and our show. We need you. Please call now. Thank you so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, that was a spirited debate with Julio Rivera about immigration and whether and refugees, and whether or not Donald Trump and Mike Pence should be arrested and put in jail for kidnapping and child abuse. We'll no doubt continue that conversation as we go through the program. But right now, Dr. Richard Wolff is with us, our old friend, the economist, the co-founder of Democracy at Work, the author most recently of Capitalism's Crisis Deepens, Essays on the Global Economic Meltdown, his website, democracyatwork.info. You can tweet him at Prof. Wolff, PROFWOLFF. Dr. Wolff, welcome back.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
It is always great having you with us on the program. Venezuela, I wanted to talk about Venezuela and hyperinflation and kind of tie it into the discussion of the Green New Deal and how Republicans are saying that would lead to hyperinflation here in the United States. They're saying, hey, if you want to spend a couple $1 trillion doing something really cool, the government's going to have to print money, and you're going to end up looking just like Venezuela. You're going to have hyperinflation. You want to have Venezuela? Do the Green New Deal. That's what these socialists are trying to bring to you. But my recollection, and please educate me about this, you're the professor of economics. My recollection during the 1970s, when the Arabs cut off our oil supply and we saw inflation, really just go through the roof. It wasn't hyperinflation, but I bought a house with a 13% mortgage. I remember that well. And I think they got as high as 18% at one point. That what we learned, or what I learned then, was that inflation was not caused by the government printing too much money. It was caused by a lack of a commodity that is essential to the country, in this case, oil. And what I understand is going on in Venezuela is the commodity that they are lacking that's essential to that country right now is American dollars. And is that true? And can you explain that? And am I making sense here, or way out in left field?
No, you're making perfect sense. There's something absurd in these kinds of arguments. A hyperinflation simply means that prices are going up quickly. And if prices are going up quickly, it's usually a sign of a certain imbalance. Either there's more money chasing after insufficient numbers of goods, or there's not more money, but there's a drop in the availability of goods, so that competing people wanting to get the scarce goods bid up the price, because that's how markets work. If there's more people who want something than there is of that something, the people start bidding against each other, driving up the price. So in the case of Venezuela, they have a set of conditions that produces an excess of money on the one hand and a diminution of goods and services on the other, so you get a very rapid inflation. Other countries have had that, countries that have nothing to do with socialism. It's really not relevant to that. It can happen in a socialist country, but it typically has happened much more often in capitalist countries when those conditions occur. The argument that you can't have a New Deal, green or otherwise, because the government will spend money to do it and therefore will have an inflation. I mean, the best way to answer that, since it is stone cold wrong and silly, is to remind people that the Green New Deal is a play on the term New Deal. And in the 1930s, we had a New Deal in which the government spent an enormous amount of money putting 15 million people to work, paying their salaries, creating Social Security, which gave millions more money every month, creating unemployment compensation, none of which had existed before, pumping more money into the economy. Did we have the inflation that these worrywarts want us to think about? No. Prices fell in the 1930s. Not only didn't they go up quickly, they didn't go up at all, they went down. And so the reality was, putting all those people to work produced the goods and services so that the money the government spent was easily used up to buy those things, not only at no rising price, but actually the things were produced in such quantities that the prices went down, even though the government was spending more money. So in order to answer these kinds of questions, you have to stop doing the kind of ideological quackery that you hear about this. The people who are against the Green New Deal don't want the government to be doing the things that they would prefer to make private profit on. The rest of it is a lot of BS to prevent that, to keep their privileges, to keep the very system that produced the inequality you were talking about before we began conversing. Beyond that, economics-wise, it's silly.
Yeah. So when and I see this a lot on television. I see it even on television networks where the hosts appear to be kind of leaning left, like MSNBC and some of the shows on CNN, where AOC is great and Bernie is great, but we really can't afford that. And I'm hearing this now from presidential candidates. In fact, several of them have come forward and said, no, Green New Deal, no, I can't. Medicare for all, we can't afford that. Education for all, we can't afford that. And I keep banging my head against the wall, particularly when I hear like Democratic senators saying this kind of crap, forgive the word, because my recollection, and again, please fact check me on this, is that during the GI Bill in the 1950s, 60s, and early 70s, for every dollar that we spent educating young men and women who came back from World War II, college educations, we got an additional $7 in government income that is tax revenue that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten because they had higher incomes and so they paid higher tax rates. That when Eisenhower borrowed money to build the interstate highway system, it produced way more in tax revenues than it cost us. That these things are actually revenue generators. They don't. To say that we can, and the same thing with having a healthy populace. If everybody had health care and we took the 20% bloodsuckers, the health insurance companies out of the equation, we would save money and we'd have a healthier populace. How can anybody, including a Democrat, make the argument that we can't afford to give everybody college education, that we can't afford to have a national health care system, when in fact, that we can't afford to have a Green New Deal, new infrastructure, green new infrastructure, when in fact, every single time in the past that we have done these things or things like these things, they have actually generated more wealth than they have cost?
Well, it's 50 years of endless propaganda to make all of this seem reasonable, sadly, even to middle of the road or even slightly left of center Democrats who have, drunk the Kool-Aid and imagine that this sort of thing is what you have to say and what you have to kind of believe. Here's the silliness with the taxes. You're absolutely right. The top tax rates on really wealthy people were between 70 and 95% for much of the 1950s, 60s, and into the 70s. And that's one of the reasons why, when government spent money and put people to work, or built the highways, or built the interstates and so forth, the money that was generated, the jobs that were generated, pumped a lot of money into the federal government, so you didn't have these kinds of problems. So it's bizarre to say we can't afford something at the end of a 40-year period when you have cut taxes on corporations vastly, and you've cut taxes on the richest 10 or 20% of the people enormously. That's the reason we, quote, unquote, can't afford it. Of course we can afford it, just like we once did afford it. But that would require jacking up the tax rates on the rich, and that's the real issue here. They don't want to do that, so they invent these other arguments because they haven't the courage or the honesty to say, honestly, I don't want to pay any more taxes, and I'm going to do everything I can to prevent it. If I could go back on one more point about Venezuela.
Please.
A nearby country, like Venezuela, a socialist country, Bolivia, run by a leader who calls his country and himself a socialist, a man by the name of Evo Morales, who's roughly the equivalent in Bolivia of what Maduro is in Venezuela. They're both socialist countries. Is there a runaway inflation in Bolivia? Not at all. Are people leaving Bolivia for another country? Not at all. Bolivia had one of the fastest growth rates over the last few years of any country in Latin America. The point is not that socialism is always good or always successful. That would be silly. But it is just as silly to imagine that you can pick a country that is having a lot of difficulties for a whole host of reasons, happens to be socialist, and therefore allows everyone from Mr. Trump on down to carry out one of the dumbest moves any student ever had to be reprimanded for, which is don't make an entire case about a system dependent on one example that you happen to choose. That's not honest. You know, that's really a kind of flim-flam economics, not a serious approach to what's going on.
Yeah, well, flim-flam and Trump, I mean, shouldn't surprise us, I suppose. No. So what would you say is the biggest lesson of Venezuela? We had Greg Palast on the show last week. He used to report from Venezuela about Venezuela for the BBC, like, a decade ago. And he pointed out that the Maduro government, and he sent pictures, right? The cabinet and all the members of Congress of his party, they were all people of color. And then you look at a picture of the guy Guido, or whatever his name is, the Speaker of the House that Trump wants to be president, and you look at all the members of his party, and there was like 200 of them in this picture. They were all white European ancestry. All of them.
Right.
And Greg was making the point that the reason that we have singled out Venezuela is twofold. Number one, we want their oil, the same reason we went after Iraq, the old Dick Cheney thing. And number two, you've got a government in a majority people of color nation that is a majority persons of color government. And that was intolerable to Trump and the white supremacists. We have a little less than a minute. Your thoughts on those things?
Yeah, I mean, the United States, it's again a little bit like the earlier argument. The United States has tried to get rid of Chavez. That failed, and it went to work for the last 20 years trying to undo that government with trade sanctions, military interventions, freezing their assets, number one. Number two, you have that minority sitting at the top of Venezuelan society, rich, white, etc., that doesn't want to lose its century and a half of special privileges sitting on top of a very poor country. Then you have a revolutionary effort, Chavez and now Maduro, trying to undo that. They have two enemies, the hardcore who controlled industry and banks inside their country, that white ruling class, and the Americans as their allies. That's a hard row to hoe, and a lot of their problems come out of that confrontation.
Brilliant. Brilliant, as always. Dr. Richard Wolff, thank you so much for being with us, Professor.
Glad to talk with you.
Great talking with you. DemocracyAtWork.info is his website. RDWolff, also with 2Fs.com. And you can tweet him at Prof Wolff, PROFWOLFF. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. And welcome back, Patrick in Seaside, California. Hey, Patrick. Thanks for watching the program on free speech. What's up?
Well, you mentioned kidnapping and child abuse. I wanted to add a third charge or crime, but before I do, I had two things I wanted to say about Trump. I think the only thing the Bush crime family has on Trump so far is body count. I think it's not outrageous if you can include the crimes in Central and South America, Pinochet, Letelier being assassinated on our soil, the death squads, and then 2 invasions in the Gulf. I think 2 to 3 million dead is not far-fetched to attribute to 41 and 43. That's first
and
of all,
Reagan.
That's why the only thing that and Reagan, yeah, that's the only thing they have on him so far. My other quick point, and not meant to be taken too flippantly, is I was just thinking, God, Trump really probably does have the potential to be worse than Hitler, because Hitler was a vegetarian who adored his German Shepherd. This guy eats absolute utter crap. I don't know how many drugs he's on to keep him from having a simultaneous stroke, heart attack, and aneurysm, just have his head and chest explode from all the garbage he feeds himself. He eats total crap, and he hates animals. But my main point was, you mentioned kidnapping.
Well, if I may, Patrick, just to that real quickly, because we have a little bit of time here. I don't know if you saw it, but the New York City's health department just came out with a report on the Trump hotels, on the restaurants in the Trump hotels. Rats, cockroaches, they basically failed. So it may be that the reason that Donald Trump only eats fast food is because he knows how bad the food is in his own restaurants.
Oh God! I didn't even think about that. I totally agree.
So
I totally agree with you.
You want to talk about separating kids from their parents?
Yeah, I totally agree with you about kidnapping and child abuse. But what I wanted to know is, since a lot of these kids are being funneled to Betsy DeVos affiliated quote unquote adoptions and foster homes, could we add trafficking to that? And could you apply RICO Act provisions or the Mann Act? I mean, does this count as trafficking?
Well, the Mann Act applies to transporting underage people, not even underage, transporting people across state lines for the purposes of sex. And so that's, it's mostly targeted at prostitution.
Although that might apply for some people in this group.
Tragically, yes, but probably not the vast majority of them. But trafficking, and I mean, we don't know where a lot of these kids are. We may never know, because people just showed up and said, "Oh yeah, I'm related to that kid," and the government said, "Okay, here you go," or they got moved from facility to facility when facilities like this place in Arizona get shut down for child abuse.
God, did the biblical Egyptians of Exodus even do this kind of crap to the Israelites? They kept families together. They worked them to death, but they kept the families together, didn't they?
As far as I know,
such atrocious, heinous. This is not us. This is not American.
No, the closest we've gotten to this in recent history is when Franklin Roosevelt interred the Japanese, and he kept families together. In fact, he kept communities together. And I don't mean that in a super positive way, but by and large, the areas that they had inside those camps reflected the towns that people came from. And
I don't think that we've seen this level of sociopathy, this from Miller and Trump in a long time, or maybe ever.
Of brutality.
It's a whole new level.
I think you have to go back to the Andrew Jackson administration and his war against Native Americans, his genocidal war against Native Americans and the Trail of Tears, to see this level of sociopathic behavior.
Right.
Patrick, thank you for the calls. 22 minutes past the hour. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You could sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at thomhartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Lewis in Chicago. Lewis, you don't believe kids were separated? Am I reading this right?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting, the biggest story of the day, the Jesse Smollett case you're ignoring, when it fits in so perfect, his hoax fits in with your hoax. Tell me what parents are not are getting separated from their kids. These kids, what are they doing on our border? And why is it that you talk about foreign kids more than you talk about ours?
Wait a minute. First of all, you're saying there's no kids being separated from their parents, and then you're saying, but here they are on our borders. You can't have it both ways, Lewis.
No, you can. They're on our borders. Why are they there? They're not there with their parents.
They're there because our policies, the Reagan policies in the 1980s in Central America, destroyed the countries that they came from.
She said, Obama.
And if you don't think that these kids were separated from their parents, then why did John Kelly go on national television and tell us that he was doing this intentionally to inflict emotional pain on these parents and these children to discourage other parents and children from coming to the United States? Did he just make that up?
I tell you what. If we find one kid that is released to someone who is not their parent, we can charge you for sex trafficking. You cannot prove that kid is
we have already found multiple kids. There have been court cases on this. Lewis, I don't get why you don't believe this. It's just astonishing to me. And try to bring up Jesse Smollett. I mean, that's a tragedy. This is a sad commentary on how seductive fame is and what people will do to get it. But that has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that he's black. Apparently, he's black. These kids down there are brown. Is that what's setting you off, Lewis?
Tom?
I just asked you a question.
You cut out. What is it? Please answer. Ask again.
Sure. Yeah, you wanted to bring up Jesse Smollett, and you're ragging on these kids down the border. He's black, they're brown. Is that what's setting you off?
No, I could care less. The thing is
so if we were separating British immigrant kids, it would be okay with you?
If these kids are so interested in coming here with nothing for God knows what reason, why are they coming here?
Lewis, think for a minute, just for a moment, just pause and for just a little bit of humanity here. Think about what it would take for you to go to your children in the middle of the night and say, we have to flee. Gather everything you can carry in one suitcase or less. We're never coming back to you're in Chicago. We're never coming back to Chicago. We are fleeing our country. What would it take for you to do that, Lewis? Think about what those parents are going through. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day in just a moment. Today is the first day of the Spring Pledge Drive for Free Speech TV, and it is a critical time. It's like all the tipping points are converging, right? Climate change is now, has reached the point where we know that we've actually passed the tipping point with regard to Arctic and Antarctic and Greenland ice and things like that. It's just, which is very rarely discussed in the media. We've got a really important Democratic primary coming up at the same time that we're discovering that perhaps Russian or other trolls are out there. The media is reporting that there's this concerted effort to drive people apart inside the Democratic Party to cause, people who are supporting different candidates to essentially hate each other. And again, that's very, very little discussion of that anywhere else. The genuine and important issues of the day, you find them right here on Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV with this confluence of tipping points, this election rushing upon us, American fascism. We've got, right wingers now developing arsenals to go out and kill liberals in the media. I mean, this is a crucial time. Yesterday was the anniversary of 1939. Yesterday was the day that the 30,000, as I recall, 29, I think it was 30,000 people gathered in Madison Square Garden to give the Nazis salute and hear a speech about how we had to be a white Aryan nation, and applauded it. And the police were there and they beat up a guy who was a protester. And I mean, you look at that, nightatthegarden.com, I think is the website. You look at that video and it's like, oh my God, this is a Trump rally. He just speaks in code. And you're not hearing that conversation anywhere other than right here on Free Speech TV about what's really going on in America. And that's why you need to call right now. This is a really important point in time. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call Free Speech TV right now and tell them that you want to donate, you want to participate, you want to support Free Speech TV, you want to be a member of Free Speech TV. This is such a critical time. Please call now. You can also donate on the website at freespeech.org as well. We have some donation level goodies for you with a $20 gift. You get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get a collection of Free Speech TV stickers, the 6-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get my brand new book. It's not even, frankly, it's not even printed yet. It won't arrive in your mail until probably late May. But it is, we laid our hands on, on a pre-order here on these things. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, and it starts out with the story of genocide and slavery, the foundation of this country, in genocide of Native Americans and slavery of Africans, and how guns facilitated both those things. Those were the critical technologies in perpetuating slavery and in instituting 400 years of genocide, the largest genocide in the history of the world in all probability, although there may well be a similar one in Africa under colonialization. It wasn't as well documented. But still, as many as 100 million people killed on this continent by essentially our ancestors. And so the book starts with that, and then goes through how the NRA got in bed with with the right wing, and how the laws were changed, and it's just an amazing book. That's with a $72 gift. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt with the viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get everything that I just mentioned. You get the book, the hoodie, the T-shirt, the pin, and the stickers. That's with a $360 gift. With a $500 gift, I'm putting together a webinar series. We did one on NLP a couple of weeks ago for donors, major donors to our last campaign, and it worked really, really well. It was a lot of fun. People liked it. We're going to do this one on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma. I've written a couple of books about these topics. We're going to do a deep dive into how, in these troubled times, how we can get control of and heal from fear, anxiety, stress, and even trauma using deep psychological techniques some of them go back to the 1700s. Some of them are more modern strategies developed by people like Milton Erickson and Richard Bandler, how to deal with pains from the past, fears about the future, resolving trauma, letting go of the triggers in our lives, how to become more resilient. That'll be the webinar. That's with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can spend the last hour of the show here in the studio with us and see how we do the show, and we'll walk over to or drive to a nearby restaurant and have a nice lunch together. That's with a $1,000 gift. But the point is, we need to make this day big. Please, let's kick off this day. Let's really do it. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV and our show. We need you. Please call now. Thank you so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, 34 minutes past the hour. Just a quick heads up, by the way, at the top of the next hour. Dr. Douglas Rushkoff is going to be with us. He was with us with his book, Present Shock, some years ago. And this time he's got a new one out. We'll be talking about that on the air. His new book is Team Human. So just a quick heads up. Jesse in Greensboro, North Carolina. Hey, Jesse, thanks for calling. What's up? Thanks for watching us on YouTube.
Hey, Tom, it's a pleasure as always. I'm actually the guy Jay from Greensboro. I put my real name up there. I wanted to address a caller who was crying about the people at the border.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm finna go into a rant, a small rant, but kind of a rant because this needs to be said.
Go for it.
I am so sick and tired of these retarded Trump supporters crying about brown people at the border. When there was an article I just saw on NPR, and I'm probably about to post it in the chat. Basically, it was a guy who was in the National Guard, 49-year-old lieutenant, white guy. You know what he was planning on doing?
Yeah, he's planning on killing people like me. He was going after liberals in the media and Democratic politicians. He was planning on trying to start a civil war, and it was all about white supremacy.
Basically, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. What he was trying to say was, I'm going to murder as many people as possible, and if I can't get Whitey off the couch, I'm going to kill them because they're traitors to our white genocide.
Yep.
Let me go ahead. As a black man, shocker. Let me go ahead and just put this out here right now. Humanity is all one species.
Yep.
Pigment is nothing but a chemical in your skin. That's it. That's all it is.
Yep.
And the problem is that when you have these idiot, retarded, stupid, moronic, brain-looking Trump supporters call your show talking about trying to have an argument, and you start asking, like you asked him, okay, is this something against brown people? Dude was like, oh, you cut out. You didn't cut out. He didn't want to answer the question because you exposed him. That's the thing. And I think really what's going on, this is what we need to do to these dumb conservatives, is because they always call into the show, talk about they got a point to make and can't make the point. So what we as liberals and progressives need to do is hold their feet to the fire, have them smolder and cook this to see how it feels. Because the thing is this, Kellyanne Conway's so-called alternative facts, and she's looking like Pennywise, is not a cute thing. They're saying, hey, let's believe in a lie before we believe in the truth.
Yeah. Well said. Well said, Jesse. Thank you very much for the call. Appreciate it. Howard, Howard, I don't have a city for you. Where are you calling from?
Hollywood, Florida.
Aha. Okay, great. What's up?
I think we should consider giving Trump the funding for the wall if he will name it either the Barack Obama wall or the Hillary Clinton wall.
Okay. I love it. Okay, Howard, thank you very much. That's our moment of levity for the day. Jerry in Trenton, New Jersey. Hey, Jerry, what's on your mind?
Tom, good to talk to you. I'll make this very brief. Tom, in your commercial, you mentioned the horrible Nazi rally in the 1930s.
Right, 1939, Madison Square Garden yesterday.
Yeah, and as I'm sure you're aware of, there's a 7-minute documentary on that called The Night in the Garden.
I tweeted it out this morning. Yes.
Okay. In there, it shows the courageous guy jumping on stage and protesting.
Yes.
Now, I watched the documentary, and it looks like those antediluvian thugs, the brown shirt idiots, beat up the guy. Now, I know the footage is choppy, but my take on it was that the New York City cops actually rescued that guy. I mean,
that's what it looked like, although they may well have been beating on him, too. Who knows?
Who knows? But my only point is, and look, I love your show. Your commentary almost makes it seem as though the cops participated in that, and my take on it was that it was actually, if it hadn't been for them, I don't think he'd have made it out of there alive.
Yeah, that may well be the case, and if I was, I don't think, certainly the intent of my comment was not to say that the police were there, right? But actually, though, if you look at the very beginning, if you go to nightatthegarden.com, I think is the website, and you look at the first minute of that, you will see the police outside the theater where there were anti-Nazi protesters beating up the anti-Nazi protesters.
Agreed. You're 1,000% right. I'm just reviewing, and again, I might be quibbling over a very, very minor point.
Yeah.
But look, I love your show, love your commentary, will support you 1,000,000%. I just wanted to bring that small point out.
And Jerry, let's both of us encourage everybody, and you can find my, I tweeted it out this morning. I'm pretty sure it's nightatthegarden.com. If it's not, you can easily Google it or DuckDuckGo it and find it. It's a 7-minute documentary. It won all kinds of awards, and it is about a Nazi rally of over 20,000 Americans in Madison Square Garden in New York City on this day, or actually on yesterday in 1939. And
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Jerry,
every time something like that happens, it's like lancing a boil and letting all the poison out.
Yeah, amen. Jerry, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Kenyatta in Redlands, California. Hey, Kenyatta, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I just wanted to call you. I've enjoyed your show, as I always do, but I wanted to remind you that the kidnapping and separation of children from their parents forcibly is something that people of my ilk are very familiar with, and it took place long before this current crisis.
Oh, you're right. So when I said this is the first time our government has done this, that was just like totally wrong, because that was just a normal part of slavery. And I use normal in quotes.
Not only that, Mr. Hartman, it continues to this day. Would you argue with me that 12-year-old Tamir Rice was not forcibly taken away from his parents?
That's a good point.
In any event, I just wanted to mention that, and you did have a caller that mentioned Jesse Smollett. I can only say about that, Tom, that we live in alternative realities, those of us who are black and those of us who are not in this country. And the Jesse Smollett case, Donald Trump may call it fake news, but there are lots of angles to that. I'm not really ready to automatically accept the fact that this was some ruse perpetrated by him. Maybe, and as a black person, you see, these are the things we think about. Maybe the police, maybe he was really attacked, and the police were involved in this ruse in Chicago. Maybe they set him up. Maybe he is a Trump stooge, what's that moron that was with Trump in the Oval Office? I forget his name, West or something. That guy. Maybe it was that type of thing. But
Kanye West, yeah.
It's Black History. It's Black History Month, and I simply wanted to say to you that this morning I had a great conversation with a guy that you know very well, Rob Call.
Mm-hmm.
He said wonderful things about you, and so did I. So you should be feeling warm and fuzzy.
Oh, that's great. Rob has been one of my best friends for decades.
He said that. I've done a piece that's going to be published by Op-Ed News, so I'm going to give myself a shameless plug here, not because I seek fame or fortune. I want to try to change the world as best I can by touching minds. And I've written a piece called What African American Means to Me. It'll be published in Op-Ed News tomorrow. I will email you a copy of it, and I think that it will be very enlightening to those who choose to seek enlightenment.
Great. I look forward to it. Op-Ed News is a great site. Rob Call's the guy who owns and runs the site, and it's one of the few sites where somebody who is just starting out essentially as an editorialist or as a reporter can get their stuff published and in front of a large audience. So I wish you the very best with that, Kenyatta. It's a great place to start. Thanks for the call, and thanks for reminding me that child separation, particularly among people of color, is nothing new. That this is merely a new iteration of it that's coming along with this administration. Thanks, Kenyatta.
Love you, Tom.
Yeah, good. Back at you, Kenyatta. Good talking to you. Rob in Mesa, Arizona. Hey, Rob, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I'd like the argument you had earlier with the person, but I just kind of wanted to reframe it a little bit and just say that, there's only in my view, two reasons why people want to come to this country. One is for asylum, and one is for better economic reasons. And regardless of the reason of coming to this country, a wall is not the solution.
Right.
So if they're going to end run, the legal means to get in here, then basically you have to look at, okay, what's allowing them to stay? And you mentioned this many a time with the illegal hiring, and I totally agree with that. And so if you're just, people aren't coming to the country. They're basically coming for two reasons, and we need a court system to pick them out. Now, your other caller had mentioned about the trafficking. I believe that's a big issue, and I think if you dig deeper in that, that could be a reason why they're not hiring more judges. There's a lot of people probably making a lot of money housing people right now.
Yeah.
And
millions of dollars. I mean, $800 a day to keep a kid in a cage along with 4 or 5 other kids.
So it's ironic that, they're worried about taxpayer money. Instead of just changing the laws to let people work here legally, they don't have to become citizens. Just give them work visas. They'd be paying taxes. We'd be making money off of them. Instead, it's costing us, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, and not only that, the people are exploitable, and very often exploited. I mean, the people without documentation who were working for Donald Trump at Bedminster at his golf course were afraid that if they went public, if they contradicted Trump, if they spoke back, if they didn't behave, yes sir, that not only would they lose their jobs, but they could be turned over to ICE. I mean, there's a legitimate fear there that makes people the victims of exploitation. Right. Even if it doesn't nakedly happen, the fear causes them to behave as if it could. Rob, I got to run, but thank you for the call. It's excellent points all. We're going to check in with Talk Media News in just a moment. Bob Ney will be with us, so stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Speaking the truth, the multinational corporations would really rather you didn't know all about.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with Bob Ney in just a few minutes. And welcome back, Lafayette. I don't have a city for you, Lafayette, but I see that you're calling, watching Free Speech TV. What's up?
Well, Nuremberg ICE. While we speak, Tom, state-sponsored child molesting is going on in these for-profit prisons, and under the Fifth Amendment, we, the people, have the right to form courts of militia to arrest anyone involved in this satanic conspiracy without indictment.
Where do you find that in the Fifth Amendment, Lafayette?
In the first, no one can be held without indictment except under conditions under military or militia. Right. And thanks to the NRA, we're all militia now. We can all be shot.
Well, back when this was written, the militia that they were talking about were the slave patrols in the South.
All right, but under the 10th Amendment, all the powers of the government have to be specified specifically, whereas under the 9th, our rights do not have to even be enumerated.
It also says, or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. So maybe they were.
We're not in times of public danger right now with a traitor in chief.
Yeah, I don't think that, there are state laws that enable citizens' arrests, and they vary from state to state. I don't see it in the Constitution. I get it that you do, and maybe you're right.
It's not denied. It's not denied in the Constitution.
No, it's not. But I think that if you were to, walk up to a public official, to a, Trump administration official and say, I'm going to perform a citizen's arrest based on federal law or the Constitution, you would probably be the one who ends up in jail. Lafayette, thanks for the call. Good idea. I mean, we're all grasping at straws here some days. Denver and Irvington, Kentucky. Hey, Denver, what's on your mind? Thanks for watching Free Speech.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. First-time caller, long-time listener.
Thank you.
I was just, I haven't heard anybody say anything about it. This guy wants to build a stupid wall, which we don't need. But yet we got a statue on the other side of the country telling bring your hungry and bring your poor.
Right.
So what you want to do, tear down the Statue of Liberty next time after this is done? It doesn't make any sense. I just don't understand
I think that the Statue of Liberty, were it animate, would have tears running down her face.
Exactly.
She is Columbia. I mean, it's the founders. It's a fascinating story. It was mostly Ben Franklin's idea, apparently. But Jefferson and Madison appear to have had something to do with it. They were looking at Greek and Roman democracies and republics, and they said they all have gods and goddesses. And, we've got plenty of, gods and Jesus and stuff, but where are our goddesses? And so they literally invented a goddess out of thin air, named her Columbia after Columbus, you know, the discoverer of the continent, and put her on the top of the Capitol building, put her on our coins. She was on our coins right up until Ronald Reagan took her off. She's in front of, or in the symbols of, every single federal agency. John Ashcroft famously covered up her naked breast, the one at the Justice Department where she's holding the scales and she's blindfolded and she's got one breast showing. She is the goddess of our country, and they named the District of Columbia after her. It's the District of the Goddess. No building in the city of Washington, D.C. can be built taller than the top of her head on the Capitol building, which is why there's no skyscrapers there. And most people have no idea. It's just amazing stuff. So, yeah, I think that, and when the French sent us a statue, they sent us a statue of Columbia. They said, here, you know, here is your goddess, and she's in New York Harbor, and I think that, you know, if there's not tears in her eyes, somebody should paint them there. Denver, thank you for the call. Well, and the Emma Lazarus poem that goes along with it. We'll be back with Bob Ney. Stick around. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's you know, there's just it's there. It's there for you, and it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day. All this stuff and more, it's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff, and you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, the new book by Ellen Ratner. On the line with us is the author of Sideswiped, former Congressman Bob Ney. Bob, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Tom.
So what's at the top of the hit parade for you? What do you see in the news today that you think is of great consequence?
Well, talking about money, now not just the $5.9 million that Bernie Sanders has raised, but the Fortune 500 companies, the big money. I don't know if anybody's called in on that with the regulatory reports.
No.
If you've had anything. Okay, the Fortune 500 companies have begun to file their annual regulatory reports. And the pattern is emerging if you look at them yesterday when in the reports that are filed, and it's just a cursory report, but you know it can be dug into numbers-wise. So after the tax cut, which was last year, there's an outsized number led by the giants of Amazon, GM, and Halliburton, who will owe zero or very little in 2018 U.S. income taxes, or are actually due a refund. And the reason I raise this, if people look at the report, this is always debated that X amount of people pay X amount of taxes. But if you look at what the statistics say here and what the reports say, here are the numbers. General Motors is claiming a $104 million refund on an $11.8 billion profit in 2018.
Wow.
Goodyear is seeking $15 million in a refund of $693 million in profit. So they'll get, of course, their profit and the refund back. Halliburton will pay $19 million on $1.6 billion in profit. And then let me get to this one because of the debacle, quote, in New York with Amazon, which, you know, of course, AOC, they've put a billboard up against her, you know, et cetera.
Well, the Mercer families apparently funded that, according to her tweet.
Exactly. Okay, well, here's what it is, because they wanted a breakout there, of course, Amazon. Well, Amazon has its second straight year of owing zero tax. In 2017, Amazon filed for $137 million refund on $5.6 billion in profit. And so, you know, Amazon's added again, then add on top of what else they would get for their headquarters, and they had a good year.
Well, what this shows you is that in 1976, when the Supreme Court said in Buckley versus Vallejo that owning politicians, spending money to support politicians or to support political positions on the part of billionaires is simply free speech protected by the First Amendment. And then 2 years later, in the First National Bank versus Bellotti case, they said, oh, we're extending that free speech human right to corporations as well. So, by the end of 1978, leading right into the Reagan Revolution, the Supreme Court legalized bribery of politicians, ownership, wholly owned politicians, right? And that's what we've got. These politicians, it's so cheap. I'm guessing that most of these companies probably spent 10, 20, 30, $50 million at the most buying politicians to get laws written that would give them hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in tax-free profits or tax refunds. I mean, you're a former member of Congress. Isn't that how it works?
Well, sure. And here's the deviousness of it. You don't hear high profile of spending because they actually aren't having to spend that much to achieve what they want. So it's not like it shows up that they spent, 150 million, et cetera, or one company spent 10 or 15 million. They combine resources, they combine power, and then they get what they want without actually having a high profile because, what we hear, well, the tax cut benefits the working people of America.
Yeah, which we know is BS. But my understanding is that that these days you can buy legislation with as little as a $30,000 campaign contribution to a member of Congress. Is that right?
Well, I mean, there's different cases of political push and power, and I will tell you this, too. It comes at the leadership levels is even worse, because I had been part of meetings where if you went against somebody, they would stand up and say, let me tell you what's contributed to our caucus. So if they give a member 15 or 20,000, but if they give the leadership team 150,000, then the leadership team breathes down your neck.
Yeah, and as Ryan Zinke, I mean, when he was his hearings to go into Interior, when he was in Congress, he said, if you don't donate at least $10,000, I'm not going to talk to you.
All right,
as I recall,
it's buying access into the system.
Yeah, it really is. What else is up, Bob?
Well, the Mueller report, but also I wanted to mention, because I know you'll be talking about it, but there's a person of interest, which is kind of fascinating. I have not heard this name before, and his name is David Giovannis, and he is tied to one of the oligarchs, Oleg Deripaska. And I'm sorry, my Russian is not that good, but he's tied to the oligarch, and he goes back to 1990, and particularly 1996, on a trip to Moscow for the Trump Corporation, for the Trump Tower. And the Senate, it's becoming known now, they are pursuing this man. It doesn't say where he's at. I'm assuming he's Moscow-based. I'm assuming he's over there, but they want to talk to him. So I don't know if his name surfaced through the Mueller report or something, but Tom, this is a name I have not heard of before. And again, it's David Giovannis, and the Senate Intel Committee, Senate investigators, I should say, are looking to find him, and they want to talk to him.
So the Senate Intel Committee is run by the Republicans. Are they actually starting to get serious about this?
Well, it's gotten leaked out that they're looking for him, so I think it's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, and Deripaska seems to be at the center of so much of this stuff. I'm looking forward to learning more about it. Bob, thank you so much for the call or for the news today. I appreciate it. TalkMediaNews.com. Thanks, Bob. We'll be back. Dr. Douglas Rushkoff is going to be with us. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. Stick around. It's going to be fascinating.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Today is the first day of the Spring Pledge Drive for Free Speech TV, and it is a critical time. It's like all the tipping points are converging, right? Climate change is now, has reached the point where we know that we've actually passed the tipping point with regard to Arctic and Antarctic and Greenland ice and things like that. It's just, which is very rarely discussed in the media. We've got a really important Democratic primary coming up at the same time that we're discovering that perhaps Russian or other trolls are out there. The media is reporting that there's this concerted effort to drive people apart inside the Democratic Party to cause, people who are supporting different candidates to essentially hate each other. And again, that's very, very little discussion of that anywhere else. The genuine and important issues of the day, you find them right here on Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV, with this confluence of tipping points, this election rushing upon us, American fascism. We've got, right wingers now developing arsenals to go out and kill liberals in the media. I mean, this is a crucial time. Yesterday was the anniversary of 1939. Yesterday was the day that 30,000, as I recall, 29, I think it was 30,000 people gathered in Madison Square Garden to give the Nazis salute and hear a speech about how we had to be a white Aryan nation, and applauded it. And the police were there and they beat up a guy who was a protester. And I mean, you look at that, nightatthegarden.com, I think is the website. You look at that video and it's like, oh my God, this is a Trump rally. It's just, he just speaks in code. And you're not hearing that conversation anywhere other than right here on Free Speech TV about what's really going on in America. And that's why you need to call right now. This is a really important point in time. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call Free Speech TV right now and tell them that you want to donate, you want to participate, you want to support Free Speech TV, you want to be a member of Free Speech TV. This is such a critical time. Please call now. You can also donate on the website at freespeech.org as well. We have some donation level goodies for you with a $20 gift. You get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get a collection of Free Speech TV stickers, the 6-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get my brand new book. It's not even, frankly, it's not even printed yet. It won't arrive in your mail until probably late May. But it is, we laid our hands on, on a pre-order here on these things. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, and it starts out with the story of genocide and slavery, the foundation of this country, in genocide of Native Americans and slavery of Africans, and how guns facilitated both those things. Those were the critical technologies in perpetuating slavery and in instituting 400 years of genocide, the largest genocide in the history of the world in all probability, although there may well be a similar one in Africa under colonialization. It wasn't as well documented. But still, as many as 100 million people killed on this continent by essentially our ancestors. And so the book starts with that, and then goes through how the NRA got in bed with with the right wing, and how the laws were changed, and it's just an amazing book. That's with a $72 gift. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt with the viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get everything that I just mentioned. You get the book, the hoodie, the T-shirt, the pin, and the stickers. That's with a $360 gift. With a $500 gift, I'm putting together a webinar series. We did one on NLP a couple of weeks ago for donors, major donors to our last campaign, and it worked really, really well. It was a lot of fun. People liked it. We're going to do this one on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma. I've written a couple of books about these topics. We're going to do a deep dive into how, in these troubled times, how we can get control of and heal from fear, anxiety, stress, and even trauma, using deep psychological techniques that go, some of them go back to the 1700s. Some of them are more modern strategies developed by people like Milton Erickson and Richard Bandler, how to deal with pains from the past, fears about the future, resolving trauma, letting go of the triggers in our lives, how to become more resilient. That'll be the webinar. That's with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can spend the last hour of the show here in the studio with us and see how we do the show, and you know, we'll walk over to or drive whatever to a nearby restaurant and have a nice lunch together. That's with a $1,000 gift. But the point is, we need to make this day big. Please, let's kick off this day. Let's really do it. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV and our show. We need you. Please call now. Thank you so much. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the third hour of our program. We are, for this next half hour, going to get into one of our conversations with great minds. I'm so glad to have with us Dr. Douglas Rushkoff. He's the founder of the Laboratory for Digital Humanism and a professor of media theory and digital economics at City University, New York, Queen's Research Fellow, Institute for the Future, author of more than 20 books, including his latest just released, Team Human. Our technologies, markets, and cultural institutions, once forces for human connection and expression, now isolate and repress us. It's time to remake society together, not as individual players, but as the team we actually are. Last time we talked with Douglas was about your book, Present Shock, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was last time. Yeah, and
Some time ago.
Yeah, and that was 2013.
2013.
I did one between then and now called "Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus,"
which sounds like a great book.
Yeah, all the sort of the inequality of the digital economy, and now Team Human.
So before we get to Team Human, let's just talk. Oh, and by the way, you're here in Portland. You're live in the studio with me because tonight you're going to be doing a gig at Powell's Books, which is just legendary and a wonderful venue. You're going to love it. It really is. And then tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night I'm doing a Team Human live. It's a podcast I do, but I do them sometimes in live audiences at Bunk Bar here in Portland too.
Here in Portland too. Okay, great. Because we're also on the air here in Portland on X-Ray FM. So. To start with throwing rocks at the bus, at the Google bus, people were actually throwing rocks at you. These were the Google. I'm sorry, I missed that book of yours. These were the buses that Google uses in Silicon Valley to transport their workers around?
Yeah, I mean, the whole book wasn't about that, but it kind of served as the starting point that, here's a company that was two kids from Stanford. We're going to take down big bad corporate Yahoo by creating a people's algorithm that would let us search the net in a new way from the bottom up. And, they took too much money and ended up being this really awful extractive behemoth that needs to grow. And people who lived in San Francisco where the company's operating, watch their real estate prices and their rents go way, way up, to the point where the city's unlivable for them. And the employees who live there, and it was sort of a nice idea that Google thought instead of having them drive back and forth, we'll create these big air-conditioned Wi-Fi buses that'll transport them back, to and from the mothership. Right. But to people in San Francisco, it felt like sort of a symbol of the alien invasion. Here are these people that are using San Francisco as a backdrop and a bedroom community, making it unlivable for real people, while all the capital, all the resources are being sucked out by this big company down in Mountain View. And, it wasn't just that the real estate prices or rents tripled and quadrupled, but if you were in walking distance of one of the Google bus stops, your rent was another 30% higher than it was elsewhere. So people started laying down in front of the buses and saying, gentrification. And then in Oakland, someone actually threw a rock at one of the Google buses, and the sort of very minor riot happened, and people were tweeting at me saying, "Oh, Doug, aren't you going to cheer on what happened?" Like, I can't cheer that on because
it's violence.
And I got friends on that bus, who are just trying to make a living and earn however much they need to earn before they burn out. So I wanted to sort of unwind that and show how we're all responsible for this sort of extractive explosion.
Well, and we see this, not just in San Francisco with Google. We see this not necessarily with the bus, but this dynamic at work with Amazon in Seattle. With Starbucks in Seattle, perhaps.
With Uber in London, maybe. It depends. It's everywhere. Yeah. And it's because of that big disconnection. These companies are not serving real people or places. What they're doing is serving shareholders. These are all extractive models.
Is there? It seems like there's an analogy or an analog between that and, for example, how Walmart moves into a community and destroys on average 100 local businesses, and they will target those businesses. And
absolutely, and I wrote about that. But what it takes Walmart, say, 10 or 15 years to do in a community, where they go in, they undercut all the local sellers, put everyone out of business, so they become not only the sole retailer but the sole employer in a community. So then they can underpay people or have them on part-time wages. Then all those people who are working at Walmart are also on food stamps and on welfare, and and on Medicaid or whatever to get basic services. So the net effect is a drag. But Walmart's playbook is based on the British East India Company's playbook, the early colonial playbook of extractive capitalism.
Which we rebelled against with the Boston Tea Party.
Right. And folks like Adam Smith, who are become the patron saints of libertarianism, were actually the people arguing about the problem of large
theory
capitalism.
Of moral sentiments.
Right.
He wrote an entire book that was basically, here's the dangers of capitalism. And the phrase invisible hand only appears once in Wealth of Nations, and it appears that in that one place in the context of protective tariffs, essentially. The sentence begins something like preferring domestic manufacture to that of foreign, bloody, 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 the invisible hand, bloody, bloody.
Which is really my pivot to this book, to Team Human, was where I was realizing, well, these sort of large abstracted rule sets, that used to be enforced by law in British East India time or Walmart time are now being enforced with code. So we're sort of redefining.
By code, you mean digital
computer code? That now we're living on digital landscapes that are just as oppressive as, the stock market or industrialism or the economic operating system that we were using. Mark Zuckerberg and people who are building digital companies are really building them on top of an operating system that they're not even acknowledging. They didn't go to school. They drop out of college at 19 before they've taken economics, before they've taken anthropology. So they don't know that there's another operating system embedded in the platforms they're building.
And that operating system is?
Corporate capitalism. It's extractive corporate capitalism. Right. How do we use human beings as a profit center for shares?
This is digital colonialism.
It's exactly digital colonialism. And it's interesting, it's why even privileged white males now can experience what it's like to be an indigenous population, because at least we're indigenous to the real world. And now we're seeing this sort of algorithmic invasion.
Which is why you're seeing privileged white males voting for Donald Trump when he promises them that he's going to at least give them back the dignity that they had in the 50s, 60s, 70s when they could get a union job without bringing back the unions.
Right, right. And what he is speaking to, and this is sort of what I'm trying to speak to also, and that we all have to speak to, is that there's It sounds so new agey, but there's an essential dignity to human beings, that we are worth more than our utility value. And that, again, it goes back to Marx, and I'm sorry, but, that human beings...
Marx's analysis was
pretty
spot
solid. On.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's that we are more than the inputs and outputs. And the minute that we take on the market's logic as our own, the minute that we only value ourselves in terms of our utility and what we can produce, that's when we've lost.
Yeah. So back in the 1960s, a guy named Robert Bork came up with an idea. Back in the 1880s, 1881, 82, whatever it was, Senator Sherman from Ohio first introduced what came to be the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. And it was vigorously enforced by Teddy Roosevelt and by Taft, after him. And the whole idea of this was that bigness, giant corporations getting too large, controlling markets either vertically or horizontally, was a bad thing because it was destructive to communities, which is what you've just been talking about. It was destructive to what they would refer to as competition, what today we would call entrepreneurialism, the ability of small people to start companies to compete with them. It was destructive of families. It was not honoring, in many cases, not even honoring the institutions of the company, that they were producing, vast differences in wealth, inequality in wealth, that these were all the evils of monopoly. And that was widely understood in the United States. In the 60s, Bork came along, wrote a paper about this, and said, no, that's all wrong. What Senator Sherman really was talking about, and what we really need to worry about when we enforce antitrust law, is the prices consumers pay. And the only metric that we should use to decide whether we're going to break a company up or forbid a merger is whether or not it's going to lower prices for consumers. And that became a doctrine that was adopted by the U.S. Supreme Court in a case, I'm forgetting the name, Sullivan is in that name, in the 1970s, I think it was 77, and it became the policy of the Reagan administration. And we have had no antitrust enforcement since then that doesn't specifically deal with nothing but is the consumer still getting a cheap price. So they don't view Walmart as a monopoly, for example, even if it may be the only store within 1,000 or within 100 miles for a town, because you still have cheap Chinese junk that you can buy at low prices.
And the only metric they're looking at is the price, but not the cost.
That's right. Yeah. So how do we, if we've accurately diagnosed at least one small piece of the problem, how do we wake Americans up to that, and how do we change that?
Well, a bunch of ways. I mean, I guess the simplest team human approach would be, how do we help people see themselves as sort of 360-degree human beings rather than just in their roles as consumers? Yeah, I'm a consumer sometimes, but I'm a parent, I'm a producer, I'm a worker, I'm all these other things. So if I'm understanding my rights in terms of that customer's always right, and that's the way I express myself, well, then look, then we get an American Idol presidential election, of course,
which is what we have,
right? Because we've bought into that. We've bought into that sensibility. I mean, one cure for that is going to be when people don't have the money to buy stuff anymore. So they're going to have to start looking around.
Well, that's what happened in the late 20s, early 30s. And by the way, that's also what happened in 1846 with the Great Depression then that led to the Civil War. It's what happened in 1770 in the Great Panic of 1770 that led to the Tea Party, that led to the American Revolution. I mean, it seems that about every 80 years, and the Fourth Turning, those guys, I'm forgetting their names right now, Howe and Strauss, wrote about this, about how every 80 years we have this, a collapse followed by a war, followed by a reboot, and typically a major progressive reboot.
Right,
which I've been kind of hoping for.
Yeah, but that reboot's only going to work if people engage with one another rather than their devices. In other words, as things get worse, are we going to retreat into video games and Twitter and bad TV? Are we going to have enough money to do that? Or are we going to decide that other people are more interesting?
Well, isn't this what Robert Draper was writing about in 2001 or 3 or whenever he wrote Bowling Alone?
Right.
If I'm remembering his name
correctly. Robert Putnam.
Yeah, that's right.
He was looking at the collapse of civic society's institutions.
Yeah.
Everything from the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts to the Elks Club and the
asking
Kiwanis.
Why, and some of the possible answers were cable TV. People are working too hard. Reaganism has destroyed the middle class, and now we've got everybody's addicted to their screens. Is there another piece to this?
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of it. It's really we are taking a potentially very powerful connecting industry, the internet, I mean, you were around for the beginning when it was going to.
Oh, I ran forums on CompuServe in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, when we all, I mean, a lot of us believed that it was going to be the realization of the kind of the Gaian mind. This is the way the humans on the planet would connect up each other's nervous systems and get to experience.
Oh, and we had extraordinary community in our CompuServe communities, but you were required to use your real name, which is a whole other thing.
And there was a rule you weren't allowed to do commercial activity online either.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Douglas Rushkoff, Dr. Douglas Rushkoff is with us. Team Human is his new book. We'll be right back. It's our Conversations with Great Minds.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
His website, Rushkoff, RUSHKOFF.com. You can tweet him at Rushkoff. And welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Douglas Rushkoff. His book, Team Human, Our Technologies, Markets, and Cultural Institutions and Now Isolate and Repress Us. How unique is this in human history? I mean, I called him Draper. You said his name was?
Putnam.
Putnam, that's right. My recollection, and I literally, it's been 20 years since I read, or 17 years since I read his book or whatever, was that he was mostly pointing a finger at, number one, people were working longer and harder because of the destruction of unions, and number two, television, cable television, if I'm remembering correctly. Is there, now you're talking about, the digital forces that are tearing us apart. Is this something that's cyclical? Are there?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, it's older. I think that there's some really old and disparaging notions about human beings and our behavior that we're kind of embedding in our digital infrastructure, and they're not really true. So the idea that evolution was a competition between individuals for the survival of the fittest. Read Darwin. That's
not what Darwin said. That's what Herbert Spencer said.
Right. Exactly. It's what Spencer said, or Hayek, or someone else. It's not. Evolution is actually the story of how species collaborate and cooperate with one another in order to ensure mutual survival.
To assure homeostasis, basically.
Right.
Environmental stasis.
Right. I was taught in school that the big tree, is getting all the sun and shades the little one, and the little one will perish and the big one will live. Turns out that's not true. The big tree is sharing nutrients with the little tree through a network of mycelia in the soil, which turns out to be alive and not just dirt. Yep. And then, in the winter, when the big tree loses its leaves, the little one's an evergreen. It returns soil, through the soil matrix some nutrients to the big tree, and the mushrooms take a service fee for it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like, well, wait a minute, what's that? That's not the story I was told. And then we learn that, if human beings really are the most advanced species, it's really just to the extent that we can collaborate and communicate. So we develop language and text and all these things to allow for higher levels of coordination. But, really when we take any of these tools, even when we use text, you look at the first use of text, and it was to count slaves. To keep track of people's slaves.
Back 7,000 years ago in Sumeria?
Yeah, when that's what they used it for. You look at the printing press. No, people were not allowed to do their own little pamphlets on the thing. The government controlled the printing press, and they'd kill you.
In fact, it was against the law to be literate if you weren't a Catholic priest.
Right.
I mean, for
exactly.
quite some
time. So they control, we look at these potentially liberating technologies and we say, oh, well, look, the elites end up controlling them. So now we have the internet, and people really have gained the capability of the printing press era. We can write, we can publish, but we can't program. We don't program the environments in which this happens. So you can, write on Facebook till the cows come home, and all you're really doing is enabling algorithms that are looking to modify and control your behavior.
Yeah. This is remarkable stuff. Do you see essentially the internet right now, as it's been reshaped, as a malicious force, or as a neutral force, or as a positive force?
Right now it's primarily being used as a manipulative force, right? There's a multi-trillion-dollar industry looking at how to control human behavior through our devices. Every time you swipe on your smartphone, it gets smarter about you, and you get dumber about it. And if you want to get smarter about it, you're going to open it up and find all of these black box proprietary algorithms that you're not even allowed to know what they're doing.
Right.
And when you learn what they're doing, you find out, oh, Facebook is taking my past behavior in order to put me in a statistical bucket.
And predict my future.
And predict or modify my future.
We're hitting a break here.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. Welcome.
I want to say that chickpea tinga taco.
Yeah,
I would eat that.
For our commercial stations, I was just doing a live read for HelloFresh.com/Tom. So it's a great organization.
I like that phrase, chickpea tinga taco.
Yeah, and we're pleased to have companies that sponsor our program. It keeps us in business.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're talking.
I can't imagine.
We're talking.
I do a podcast. I mean, we're just begging to our listeners to give us $2 a month.
Yeah.
But,
that's a model too.
It works.
We're talking to Douglas Rushkoff. His new book is Team Human. And we were just talking during the break about how kind of these things are not altogether new, and in hyper simplified version. If you look at European history for the last millennia, right? There was this long period of basically feudalism, and then the Black Death came along, the bubonic plague, killed off a third of Europe. That created such a labor shortage that wages went up. The middle class emerged essentially as a consequence of this, the first unions in the 1300s, late 1300s. And that produced the Renaissance, right?
Yeah.
People could, music, art, literature. Nobody had time for that before because everybody was essentially a slave. And then that faded out after about 3 generations, and the kings took over again. And then the printing press came along, and some people say that the printing press is what led us right to the Enlightenment, and right to Rousseau and John Locke and Thomas Jefferson, and on where we go. These were disruptive events. I was going to say disruptive technologies, but the bubonic plague was not a technology. But these were major disruptive events that had historical consequences that literally are ringing to this day. And I'm wondering, putting it in that kind of a context, in that kind of very large context, in the development of radio in the world in the 1920s, the development of television in the 1950s, the development then of the internet in the 1970s and 80s, what does this mean for us? How do we, as a species, deal with these kinds of disruptive cycles? And do they always end up just accruing to the benefit of the East India companies of the world?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't realize what the disruption could do, then they end up not being disruptions. They end up, the digital revolution is a reactionary movement by Wall Street against the potential for wider distribution of wealth that the internet promises. Well, in the early 90s, we used to think of the internet as unleashing the new possibilities for the collective human imagination. Right. And by the time Wired magazine came out and said, no, the internet is the salvation of the NASDAQ stock exchange, that this is an investment opportunity. So we really pivoted the entire internet from connecting people to extracting value from people. We used it as an extension or an amplification of the attention economy.
Absolutely amazing. I'm sorry we're out of time. Dr. Douglas Rushkoff is the author, the Rushkoff.com, the website. He'll be at Powell's tonight here in Portland. The new book is Team Human. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
being with us, Douglas. It's great having you in the studio. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. Stick around. Today is the first day of the Spring Pledge Drive for Free Speech TV, and it is a critical time. It's like all the tipping points are converging, right? Climate change is now has reached the point where we know that we've actually passed the tipping point with regard to Arctic and Antarctic and Greenland ice and things like that. It's just, which is very rarely discussed in the media. We've got a really important Democratic primary coming up at the same time that we're discovering that perhaps Russian or other trolls are out there. The media is reporting that there's this concerted effort to drive people apart inside the Democratic Party to cause people who are supporting different candidates to essentially hate each other. And again, that's very, very little discussion of that anywhere else. The genuine and important issues of the day, you find them right here on Free Speech TV. Free Speech TV, with this confluence of tipping points, this election rushing upon us, American fascism. We've got, right-wingers now developing arsenals to go out and kill liberals in the media. I mean, this is a crucial time. Yesterday was the anniversary of 1939. Yesterday was the day that the 30,000, as I recall, 29, I think it was 30,000 people gathered in Madison Square Garden to give the Nazis salute and hear a speech about how we had to be a white Aryan nation, and applauded it. And the police were there and they beat up a guy who was a protester. And I mean, you look at that, nightatthegarden.com, I think is the website. You look at that video and it's like, oh my God, this is a Trump rally. It's just, he just speaks in code. And you're not hearing that conversation anywhere other than right here on Free Speech TV about what's really going on in America. And that's why you need to call right now. This is a really important point in time. 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call Free Speech TV right now and tell them that you want to donate, you want to participate, you want to support Free Speech TV, you want to be a member of Free Speech TV. This is such a critical time. Please call now. You can also donate on the website at freespeech.org as well. We have some donation level goodies for you with a $20 gift. You get a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 gift, you get a collection of Free Speech TV stickers, the 6-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get my brand new book. It's not even, frankly, it's not even printed yet. It won't arrive in your mail until probably late May. But it is, we laid our hands on, on a pre-order here on these things. It's called The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, and it starts out with the story of genocide and slavery, the foundation of this country, in genocide of Native Americans and slavery of Africans, and how guns facilitated both those things. Those were the critical technologies in perpetuating slavery and in instituting 400 years of genocide, the largest genocide in the history of the world in all probability, although there may well be a similar one in Africa under colonialization. It wasn't as well documented. But still, as many as 100 million people killed on this continent by essentially our ancestors. And so the book starts with that, and then goes through how the NRA got in bed with with the right wing, and how the laws were changed, and it's just an amazing book. That's with a $72 gift. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt with a viewer design. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie with the viewer design. With a $360 gift, you get everything that I just mentioned. You get the book, the hoodie, the T-shirt, the pin, and the stickers. That's with a $360 gift. With a $500 gift, I'm putting together a webinar series. We did one on NLP a couple of weeks ago for donors, major donors to our last campaign, and it worked really, really well. It was a lot of fun. People liked it. We're going to do this one on resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma. I've written a couple of books about these topics. We're going to do a deep dive into how, in these troubled times, how we can get control of and heal from fear, anxiety, stress, and even trauma using deep psychological techniques that some of them go back to the 1700s. Some of them are more modern strategies developed by people like Milton Erickson and Richard Bandler. how to deal with pains from the past, fears about the future, resolving trauma, letting go of the triggers in our lives, how to become more resilient. That'll be the webinar. That's with a $500 gift. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and I'll take you to lunch. You can spend the last hour of the show here in the studio with us and see how we do the show, and you know, we'll walk over to or drive whatever to a nearby restaurant and have a nice lunch together. That's with a $1,000 gift. But the point is, we need to make this day big. Please, let's kick off this day. Let's really do it. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. Free Speech TV and our show. We need you. Please call now. Thank you so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Time for our geeky science for the week. Yep. Trump has put a climate change denier in charge of his panel that's looking into whether climate change is a threat to the national security. This guy has compared scientists who study carbon pollution to Nazis who killed Jews. I'm not exaggerating. He literally has made that exact parallel. And what's really going on here is that the fossil fuel industry, just like the tobacco industry before it, the fossil fuel industry is making billions on the deaths of people. You know, except that the fossil fuels are killing the entire planet, whereas tobacco was just killing, 500,000 Americans a year, mostly by lung cancer and heart disease and premature aging and all kinds of other things that come along with tobacco use. But these guys, they're killing the planet. I mean, the tobacco industry, they went out and they bought their politicians. One of them was Mike Pence. In 2000, Mike Pence wrote an op-ed about how the link between tobacco and cancer is not that well established. Right. And the fossil fuel industry, they're funding politicians and think tanks, which aren't like people who sit around and think. They're just hustlers who go out and do TV shows to push their lies and sustain their profits. And this guy is, by the way, he has no background in meteorology. He's a retired professor of physics. Got nothing to do with the atmosphere. And Trump is putting this climate change denier in charge of his Senate panel. And the other study that was just done showed that the Republican senators who deny climate change most aggressively are the ones who get the most money from big oil and big coal. There's an absolute relationship between how much money these industries give these senators and how aggressively these senators lie to us about climate change. It is absolutely mind-boggling. We've covered a lot of territory today. We were talking with Doug about his Team Human book and the digital situation. I don't want to call it digital divide. It's brilliant. Douglas Rushkoff is a brilliant writer, brilliant man. We had Dr. Richard Wolff on an hour ago, who was talking about the situation in Venezuela and how it is being wildly and badly misunderstood by both the American people and the American press, and how Bolivia, which is a socialist country that's every bit as socialist as Maduro or Chavez were, is actually one of the fastest growing countries in South America. That what you're looking at is the consequence of American intervention, American destruction of the Venezuelan economy through embargoes and things like that. And then in our first hour, we had a conversation with Julio in which he was saying that, tearing kids away. Well, I don't want to characterize what he was saying, but I was saying that Donald Trump and Mike Pence should be charged with kidnapping and child abuse for what they're doing. And your calls on any of those topics. Barbara in St. Paul, Minnesota. Hey, Barbara, what's on your mind today?
Well, I'm sitting under 34 inches of snow.
Oh, that'll do it.
Oh, man, it snows. You would not believe it.
Yeah.
It's really bad out there. Snow is everywhere.
Wow.
But I was listening to the young man this morning, the Julio Rivera, I think his name was,
Rivera,
if I'm
yeah.
not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I had to stop and think in my mind, how did his forebears get here?
I'm pretty sure that Julio's grandparents live in Puerto Rico because he goes back there to visit them.
Okay, now think about it. What has Donald Trump done for Puerto Rico? Nada.
Right.
But he's whining and crying about children, about children being taken away with their parents and coming across the border.
Barbara, can we step back from this because Julio's not here to defend himself, and
I understand. No, I'm not.
I don't want to make this about him.
I know the man, and I'm not going to make him, go punching bag or nothing like that. I don't do that. What I'm talking about is let's think about why they're taking these young men. You got to think about the young men, maybe between 13, 14, 15, and 16. I think that are down there in those camps.
Oh, there are babies that are being taken from their parents, and they're both boys and girls.
Yeah.
And it's apparently thousands of them.
Yeah, let's think about it this way, economically. Okay, let's say they're 13, 14, and 15 years old. Let's just, say that.
Okay, that's a percentage of them, certainly.
Yeah, these are planters and pickers that are for free.
And in fact, one of the stories that we did on the show either earlier this week or late last week was about how in several of these internment camps that the Trump administration has paid private for-profit corporations to build, that in these internment camps, these children and their parents who are separated are being given opportunities to work for free or for $1 a day to clean the toilets, to do the laundry, to mop the floors, just like in real prisons. And that it's all protected by the 13th Amendment because that authorizes slavery if you're in jail. The problem is these people haven't committed a crime. It's not a crime to come to the United States seeking asylum. In fact, it's perfectly legal.
See, this is the crux of the whole deal. I grew up watching basically slavery in the, let's say, the what I can remember from the 50s to the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go with my grandmother to clean this lady's houses. This is what the women had to do of our generation, of our color, had to do to make a living.
Right.
And they expected you to bring a child with you to help work. Okay, these women are come across the borders. They got the little children. Okay, we can give the little children to some organization to help them do whatever they're going to do. We know what that's all about.
Mm.
But in the other words, we're going to use the children that are able to pick, that are able to plant, that are able to clean, that are able to harvest. This is the economic boom for the large agro farms.
Yeah. It may well be, Barbara, and this is why we need to have the disinfectant of sunlight. We need to be opening up these facilities. There were a couple of Democratic senators or members of the House, I'm not sure which, who visited one of these internment camps that the Trump administration has built in, I think it was in New York State, a couple of days ago, and they came back and said they were just horrified. Children in cages, horrible conditions. I don't know that they were talking about forced labor, but certainly that is happening in some of these camps. Barbara, you nailed it. Thanks so much for the call. Howard in New York City. Hey, Howard, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I just want to mention that if the Poe report is really going to be tried to be published next week, so can they just indict somebody like the subversion of the blocking of investigations with a Flynn and Comey? Why don't they just indict him and publish the indictment before it goes to the Attorney General?
Well, they have issued over 100 indictments to this point, including, for people in Russia, people here in the United States, Roger Stone, Manafort, Cohen, Papadopoulos, et cetera, et cetera. So they have done a lot of that, and a lot of that has informed us about exactly what the crimes are that the Trump crime family has been committing, and that the Trump campaign was committing, and that apparently at least one and probably multiple foreign governments were committing in order to make Donald Trump president. And but that's one possibility. But Howard, and thank you for calling and pointing that out. But the point that I want to go back to over and over and over again, because I don't think it could be emphasized enough because the media refuses to report on it, is you go back and look at the archives in the New York Times for Christmas Day 1992. Christmas Day 1992. It was it was 2 weeks before George Herbert Walker Bush had to leave office. And Lawrence Walsh, the special counsel, was breathing down his neck. He was about to issue a subpoena for George Bush's diaries that would show where he was, when he was, what he was doing. And Bush did not want to give those diaries because he knew that he could end up in a federal prison for the Iran-Contra scam, where they cut a deal with the Iranians to hold the hostages and ruin Jimmy Carter's presidency to put Ronald Reagan into office. And then they paid off the Iranians, thank you very much for that, with illegal weapons sales. And then they took the money from those illegal weapons sales and used it to buy weapons and send them down to Central America and send death squads into Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador. Elliot Abrams was in the middle of this stuff. And the guy who pardoned him, Caspar Weinberger and Elliot Abrams, the guy who recommended to George Bush that on Christmas Day of 1992, and look at the New York Times screaming headline across the front of the page, the guy who pardoned them, or who recommended that Bush pardon them, and he took the recommendation, was the Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, William Barr. The same William Barr who was sworn in as Attorney General of the United States just a few days ago. And all of a sudden, Robert Mueller is wrapping up his investigation. William Barr comes in, Robert Mueller goes out. That, to me, does not seem like a coincidence when you look at how those 5 pardons, maybe it was 5 or 6 pardons, that George Bush did on Christmas Eve of 1992. Those pardons at the behest of Barr, and Barr came right out and said, Bush came to me and said he just wanted to pardon Weinberger, and I said, no, in for a pound, in for a dozen, or whatever the saying, in for a penny, in for a pound, whatever the saying was. He said, I told him to pardon everybody. It's right there in the New York Times. And by pardoning everybody, they shut down the investigation. And Lawrence Walsh, the special counsel, he held a press conference on the day before Christmas and said, this is a cover-up that William Barr is orchestrating. William Sapphire, the famous New York Times columnist, referred to Bill Barr as the cover-up general, not as the attorney general, in his columns. That's the guy who was put in charge of the Mueller investigation 4 or 5 days ago by Donald Trump. And now we're hearing, well, they're going to wrap the thing up. I can add 2 and 2 together and figure out what 4 looks like. And I think most of us could if we had the information. But for some reason, none of our media. I have heard one mention of this, and this was about 3 weeks ago on Rachel Maddow's show. Outside of that, I have heard no mention of William Barr's role in the get out of jail, in shutting down the investigation into George Bush's role in Iran-Contra on Christmas Day, 1992, or the day before Christmas.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
And we all need to be looking at this because this tells us exactly what's going to happen. It's just history repeating itself. This is why this guy was hired by Trump. And welcome back. Tom in Stamford, Connecticut. Hey, Tom, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Hi, I just wanted to comment on the psychopathy of Donald Trump in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, 2 days ago on MSNBC, The Last Word, O'Donnell, he read an excerpt out of
Andrew McCabe's book?
Yes. And in there, in early 2017, after or during a meeting he was having with his security people, he said, "How come we aren't going to war with Argentina?"
No, it was Venezuela.
Oil.
You're right. Trump said to McCabe, "We should have a war. If you want to have a war, it should be in our backyard, Venezuela. They've got all the oil." You're right, Tom.
Yeah. And it just goes right to his psychopathy that he just has no morals, no ethics.
I think he's trying to provoke a war with Venezuela in order to be a war president when the election comes. Because when, 1 year before the election is when George W. Bush invaded Iraq. 1 year before the election is when Ronald Reagan invaded Grenada. 1 year before the election is when Margaret Thatcher and had her little war with the Falklands. As I recall, I might be off on that 1 year part, but it dramatically increased her popularity. I think this is Trump's reelection strategy, Tom. I really do. Tom, I got to move along, but thank you very much for the call. It's great to hear from you. Liz in Redmond, Washington. Hey, Liz, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Oh, hi. I didn't realize that
you are on the air.
You were coming to me next. Here I am. Yeah. Did you hear about the billboard put up in Times Square accusing or thinking, I should say,
Alexandria Ocasio.
Yeah, for the Amazon pullout.
Yeah. Yeah,
you were?
Robert Mercer apparently paid for it. She actually retweeted it and said, "This is what we're up against. Billionaires who are feeding us, shoveling us BS."
Right. And was it yesterday or day before yesterday? You were talking to a woman. Was it Job Creators Network that
yes
she was with?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, they're the ones that put the billboard up.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It's paid for by Mercer. I saw that. I was reading that in the article. The article's in the commondreams.org.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was interesting, and I was wondering if you'd heard about it.
Yeah, I did. I saw it this morning. I saw the tweet this morning, and it was pretty. What is so cool about AOC is that she fights back. It's been a long time since there was a Democrat who fought back.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
And she is just not taking it. She absolutely is not taking it. Liz, thank you so much for the call. And yes, this actually happened. Amazon is pulling out of New York because New Yorkers don't want them there, and they don't want the billions in tax breaks and whatnot to go to Amazon. They just don't. They just don't want it happening. And so a billionaire puts a billboard up in Times Square that says, "Well, here's how many jobs you're going to lose, and it's all because of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez," or words to that effect, or implications to that effect. And she tweets it out and says, "Look at this. Isn't this amazing? Look at who's paying for this." Wow. We'll be right back. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
It's the Thom Hartmann Program, occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Jason in Brooklyn, New York. Hey, Jason, thanks for listening to us on WBAI there. What's up?
Hi, Tom. I just want to comment on climate change, what you just mentioned. First of all, the term Holocaust denier is not a term that should be used in a thing like that. Denier is like a thing that's a fact, and you deny it, you're a denier. Climate change is just not a fact. It's a hoax from a few socialist, job-hating people. And
so Jason, let me get this straight. You're trying to tell me that climate change is a hoax?
That's not my point. My point was that denier is not...
Well, whatever your point is, are you trying to tell me that climate change is a hoax?
It's not a fact. It's not a fact that if you can show me...
Where did you learn this, Jason?
What?
Where did you learn this?
I learned that there was a few places in the United States that was the coldest in the history, and I don't see anything that get hot.
So did you hear this on the radio? Did you see this on television? Who gave you this idea that because we have extreme cold weather right now that there's not global warming? or climate change?
I don't know, but the only place
you just came up with it yourself?
It is climate change. I see on the
Jason, it's an absolute predictable. This is what the climate scientists were predicting, that what's called a circular wind pattern in the Arctic in the winter, basically a giant Arctic cyclone that runs for about 3 months during the winter, would start to break apart as the planet warmed, and pieces of that winter, it's called the polar vortex, pieces of that would then slide down to more southern climates, which is exactly what happened just a week or so ago, as part of that polar air mass slid down over the north, central, and eastern parts of the United States. It's been happening now for about 5 years. This is the result of climate change. The polar vortex at the Arctic, which, prior to about 10 years ago had always maintained its integrity, broke into 3 pieces this year because so much of the ice is gone that stabilizes it. You got open water. It's warmed in the Arctic about 4 degrees Celsius now. We're 1 degree Celsius for the whole planet, but the Arctic is warming faster. And that's why the cold air came. Jason, it is not a hoax. It's real. I hope you can do your research on this and figure out what's going on. Tony, I don't have a city for you. Where are you calling from? Thanks for listening on Sirius XM, though.
I'm listening to, I'm a truck driver. I'm on the road, but I'm out of Hesperia, California.
Okay, great. What's up?
Hey, Tom, I'm glad to hear you talking about this Kia separation. How can people get away with this?
I think it's a crime. Not just a moral crime. I think it's a legal crime. I think people should be prosecuted for it.
I do too. I came into this country with my parents. I was born in Cuba. I'm a Cuban. I'm an American now, but I was born in Cuba. I came here. I was 9 years old. And if we never went through this, and we went through the same thing, asking for asylum.
Yes. Yeah.
And Tom, if you go to the border, or I go to the border and take a kid out of a mother's arm and take up with them, we're going to get charged with kidnapping.
That's right. That's right.
And Tom, I know that I call you, this thing with murder that's coming down, this investigation, Trump is going to get away with everything. He's getting away with everything. And I can't see how the people in this country, if you're a true American, how red-blooded America can't believe you are supporting this person.
Yeah. I don't think Trump is going to get away with it, Tony. I think there's a reckoning coming that, he's been able to weasel out of everything in his life because of his wealth and his privilege. I think it's coming to an end, but we'll see. Tony, thank you for the call. Let's hope for the best. Bob in Columbia, Missouri. Hey, Bob, got the last minute here. What's up?
Yeah, there's so much that happens. That last caller is very moving. Just every American should be just outraged, and is, I believe. But OCA is a real deal, man. I wanted to talk to you about... You mean
AOC?
I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. I just, for anybody who didn't know what you're talking about, that's why...
She's got tons of ideas, and she's not varnished, but, she's got great ideas, and that's what we need.
That woman is going to be president someday.
I think so. Venezuela, you're right. It's the next angle that Trump and the Republicans are thinking to do exactly what you've been saying. Historically, it all lines up. The other thing is Barr. Barr was in 92. What you say about Christmas Day, I looked it up yesterday. And they don't let you look at the New York Times headline without paying for it, but there's a lot of other information that indicates exactly what occurred. And I remember it in real time, as do you. And I was outraged at what was happening because they were kissing it off and letting it go right in the, that turbulent time around the holidays, new presidents coming in, you understand.
And the Democrats were outraged in Congress anyway. And it's such a shame that the Clinton administration didn't really go after that. But that was that era of, okay, we're going to move on. We're going to move forward. But it was William Barr, it was Bill Barr, who is currently our Attorney General, who in 1992 was Attorney General and shut down the Iran-Contra investigation by recommending that Bush issue those 6 pardons. Bob, thanks for the call. We will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Get out there, get act, and tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
From UN headquarters, I'm